On an ordinary day, Kang Seojun decided to join the Dream's side player team. Registered as Key, his goal was to reach the top one, and he succeeded until suddenly the game server was shut down. Sometime later, while making a delivery, the boy got stuck in an elevator, and a giant message appeared before his eyes. Even confused, he clicked confirm, not knowing that from that moment on, he would become a player in real life. For Dream Side 2 was launched, but this time with the entire planet Earth as its main server, forcing those who live there to play if they want to stay alive. Right off the bat, we discover that the most popular game of all time is called Dream Side, a game that everyone has tried at least once, including actors, idols, and even politicians from all over the planet. When choosing a nickname, the protagonist chooses Key and receives a warm welcome, revealing next that his dream is to reach the top one to the point where no one can surpass him. Months later, he remembers that today is the launch day of Dream Side 2, but something seems off. Since 30 minutes ago, after completing another delivery, he clicked on the username selection for the game's pre-sale, but the elevator stopped and he couldn't call for help, until the message about the creation of Channel 115 appeared before his eyes. Even without knowing what it was about being the nerd he is, the protagonist pressed the confirm button without hesitation, and received a mission where, to avoid being devoured, he must escape the elevator in a minute. Something catches his attention, and when he turns around, he comes face to face with a bunch of disgusting insects, which makes him scream like a little girl. After completing the mission, our boy receives his sword and realizes that a portal has appeared. Suddenly, red eyes appear as he wonders if he is seeing things from not playing for so long. A goblin leaps towards the young man, who, upon being hit, falls to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Frightened, he wonders why it hurts so much and why his HP is almost zero, concluding next that he needs to find a way to escape without being hit again if he wants to continue living. The monster takes a deep breath with its giant nose. The protagonist claims he is going to die, but we see he is facing a mini goblin. Mockingly, Kay says that his opponent is tiny despite the grand entrance, showing that it didn't like the joke the creature attacks. Fortunately, he is faster and manages to escape. Seeing the hole the monster made in the ground, our boy concludes that there is no time to think and starts to run. But when he tries to use the stairs, he discovers they are blocked, just like the exit, which means there is nowhere to run. The little monster throws its club with all its might. Once again, Key escapes and, looking ahead, terrified, thinks to himself that his end has come. Out of nowhere, another message appears, stating that the rewards greatly exceed the player's level and therefore adjustments have been made. Looking at his own hands, the protagonist realizes that his body has calmed down, even though he hasn't done anything. The goblin decides to charge again. Facing his opponent, our boy notices that this is a mob from a dungeon of rank F, which means his chance of losing is 0. Seeing the little monster coming at him, he says he had the advantage from the start, and with his sword delivers a fatal blow to his mini enemy, who, after dropping its club, begins to disappear. In the blink of an eye, our boy realizes that it is not over yet and questions whether he will be able to defeat the 5 goblins that just appeared. Holding his sword firmly and all dirty, he shouts for the enemies to come at him. Thus, after a few strikes, the protagonist not only eliminates the monsters but also receives the title of Evil Slayer and some tattered rags that fall from the ceiling. Shocked, he concludes that he is indeed in a game. He just doesn't know if this is real life or VR. Remembering the message about the adjustments, our boy decides to open the skill panel and discovers that he still has the attribute he acquired a month ago. Shocked, he wonders if this could be a type of reward for the server's shutdown. We find out that the first version of Dream Side failed for being too difficult, to the point that there was an individual command for each spell, which caused many players to abandon the game, especially because if a person died 3 times, the character was permanently deleted. Moreover, the top 12 ranked players were considered god level, known as those who are above, and the number 1 was obviously Kang. Thus, before the server was shut down, a poll was conducted with the aim of transferring some reward. For the second version, our boy just didn't expect that it would be that way. Otherwise, he would have selected a mythical item. When trying to activate his celestial body ability, he discovers that it is functioning partially, and to activate it fully, he will need to meet certain criteria. That's why he felt calm earlier and was able to use the sword naturally, in addition to not receiving the other 2 items he had chosen. Suddenly, another message catches his attention. Upon reading the information, our boy discovers that he has 10 minutes to escape the next 6 waves of monsters. Sweating profusely, he wonders if there is a break in the tutorial. Concluding that there isn't, he soon receives the warning that the boss will appear soon. Inside an apartment in the building, a girl wonders if the structure trembled or if she is going crazy. Suddenly, upon opening the door, she comes face to face with a goblin. We see that portals have started to appear in people's homes, in a rather random manner, as they appeared in different rooms. Upon seeing the monsters, the civilians go into a panic. Elsewhere, the protagonist hears the commotion and wonders if it has already begun. Thinking, he says that if it's like the game, more goblins will be summoned and many people will end up losing their lives. We discover that this is a dungeonization, a phenomenon where a normal area is invaded by creatures. It is also the central concept of the first version of the game. Looking at his sword, our boy says that if he weren't a player, it would be impossible to fight against the little hammer monsters. Stuck without knowing what to do, he remembers that he cleaned level 13 very well, and since no other monster appeared, it means they cannot leave their floors. Thus, if he gets out of there in 10 minutes, he can handle the situation. But for that, he will also need to reach the rooftop. His only concern is the people who are left in the building. Reflecting, the protagonist concludes that there is a method to save everyone, which only Key can use. That involves invading the dungeon. With his sword in hand, he asserts that the boss, who hates light, must be in the basement, and the only way to get there in 10 minutes would be through the portal right there. Approaching, Kang says that the only reason that passage was created was because he defeated all the creatures in the area. Thus, activating his calm attribute, he decides to experiment. After passing through the portal, a message appears, notifying that the boy has discovered the room of hidden and infected nature seeds. Quickly, he reaches the underground parking lot and says that he hoped things in the second season would be a bit different, concluding then that the fact that this is becoming real is already different enough. Upon seeing a goblin, our boy hides behind a pillar and spots the portal that the creatures use to ascend floors, a portal that he will have to block if he wants to save the people. But for that, it is necessary to find the boss. Suddenly, a colossal goblin appears, calmly strutting through the building's parking lot. The protagonist says that the monster is more like the Hulk than a goblin, and concludes that since the place is not yet a dungeon, it is necessary to use a different raid tactic, which consists of waiting until the last minute, once the mobs become short of breath. When that happens, he advances fearlessly, thanks to the calm attribute, of course. We discover that the strategy of waiting until the last minute was used by many players who wanted to level up, and even without knowing if that would apply to version 2, Seojun decided to test it. Looking around, he quickly finds a place to dodge the smaller mobs. The creatures become confused upon seeing the boy disappear after climbing onto a car. A message appears, notifying that the goblin's fury has increased due to the Coward Slayer title he activated before starting. The good side of this is that the title also weakens the creature's judgment. Suddenly, the boss attacks him with his large club. Confused, Kang wonders if the shortness of breath is over, realizing then that his opponent is moving with force. Determined to end the fight before the monster can move more, the protagonist charges in for the attack and delivers a fatal blow right to the creature's neck, sending strawberry juice flying everywhere. Amidst the chaos of the city, So Yi-hyun says that for most of the country, the weather will remain cloudy. In the metropolitan areas, strong winds are forecasted, and due to the fog, people should avoid going out. We see that the voice is coming from the radio of a car, which simply explodes out of nowhere. A normal morning became different in just 10 minutes. Thanks to the incident that occurred around 6 in the center of Korea and took over the entire country. The news quickly spread across the internet, and for those who didn't believe the posts, the future played a trick. We are taken to a dressing room where 2 employees comment that the videos could only have been made through CGI. But if they are real, it will be like living a movie. Sitting in the chair, a red-haired girl asks if this has to do with Dream Side. This is TRYHARD, a famous idol who finds herself watching a video of a guy fighting lizard-like creatures with spears. Upon seeing the creatures, the young girl wonders if dungeonization is happening. We discover that the girl is a complete artist and does a bit of everything, having only a single secret. Out of nowhere, a guy opens the door and says that the day's schedule has been canceled, so they must return to the dormitory. Standing up, the idol shows the video she was watching to her manager, who, without caring, simply says that she is not allowed to use her phone. Hana approaches and explains that this is a live broadcast and the creature is called the Red Wyvern, which means that Dreamside has become reality. Taking the phone, the man asks her to stop being addicted to the game, revealing the young girl's secret, that besides being a player, she was among the top 12, with her character Magic Bullet Shooter Clark. This hobby was not even known to her fans, since the girl used a voice modifier in addition to a male character. Desperate, she asks for her phone back, claiming that they don't have much time. While wondering why she is being confiscated just now that the world is turned upside down. Suddenly, when Tro is about to start explaining the situation, a strong tremor occurs, throwing her, the manager, and several things to the ground. Even so, she ignores it, stands up, and grabs her phone, claiming that the man will understand better when she shows him. Before anything else, the young girl logs in, then confirming that she wants to equip the reward of the magic revolver. In the blink of an eye, a weapon with golden details appears in the girl's hands. Shocked, she wonders if this is real and doesn't even notice that a portal has appeared in one of the walls. Suddenly, the manager shouts to warn her, but when Hana turns, she comes face to face with a ghoul coming towards her. Smiling, she says that the monster looks even grosser in person, then stating that she will resolve the situation with a single shot. The problem is that when her finger pulls the trigger, nothing happens, leaving her and the manager in despair. With the monster standing in front of her, the idol asks if the revolver is fake, then discovering that, in fact, the synchronization is still in progress. The monster begins to strike, forcing her to dodge as quickly as she can. When the process reaches 100%, she turns and says that he is a dead man. The bullet pierces the ghoul's body, which falls to the ground, showing that it was indeed too weak. In shock, the manager asks what is happening, but Choi simply says that he should leave, because she needs to go after Ki, the person who knows all the game's attacks. We return to see the underground parking lot, where Kang is standing next to the giant goblin. A message appears notifying that he successfully defeated the F-ranked monster, and suddenly, the creature's body disappears. Our boy says that even with that, the destruction and the strawberry juice are still there, concluding that even so, that place should not be invaded anytime soon. A large portal leading to the maze of choice appears, where, after passing through tests with different difficulties, the player gains a skill. Smiling, the protagonist asks if that means he should do the tutorial again. Upon teleporting, he realizes that he is indeed in the game's tutorial map, and that besides being able to smell what is around him, he can also feel the temperature. Turning around, Seojun spots 4 portals representing the levels of difficulty. Thinking about the skills he might receive, he says that going to the tutorial at Hell level will be more advantageous, being his first choice in other times. However, the difficulty at that level was seen by the public as an unattainable goal, and even though he was the only one to have succeeded, the circumstances this time are different. Our boy decides to look at the status board and notices that many people are playing, and as the numbers keep rising, he concludes that the phenomenon might be happening worldwide, which also means that many people are dying. Determined to prioritize himself, the protagonist chooses Hell level once again. He passes through the portal without hesitation. Upon arriving at the location, his mission is to protect the statue of the goddess of golems for 5 minutes. We discover that this time restriction only exists in this level, and that it is not possible to give up. The stone monsters charge into attack, forcing Ki to deliver several sword strikes, while he thinks it is easier than he expected. After making a lot of stone fly, he wonders if it's because of his skill. He then states that the real problem has just arrived. As the timer shows 3:59, and in proportion to the remaining time, his movements will slow down. At the same time, the monsters will become faster. Therefore, it is necessary to always stay one step ahead, which is the true terror of Hell mode. Breathless, the protagonist says there is a reason for choosing to take such a high risk. That is the fact that he can unlock a hidden mission that only exists in this level. A message appears notifying that the hidden stage has been opened due to the success of the mission, and we see that right in the center, a golem of unknown level has appeared. Kang covers his ears due to the monster's roar. The creature advances with its large foot, forcing him to jump. In thought, he says that here he might achieve a unique reward. The golem decides to use its hand, hoping to crush the young man like an insect. However, this time, besides escaping, the protagonist strikes back, which causes his blade to wear down even more. Running, he says he will only receive the reward if he defeats the big creature, so he has only one thing to do. Upon opening the inventory, a smile spreads across his face, because the corrupted hammer is now available. Holding the weapon, our boy declares that he will face the golem for real this time. With the timer showing 1 minute and 30 seconds, he charges into attack without hesitation, and the creature does the same, and the two meet right in the middle. Seeing that his hammer broke a few of the golem's fingers, Kang realizes he has a chance to win. Thus, he delivers more strikes while dodging. When the creature's foot is hit, it screams in despair. When attacked again, the protagonist thinks that since this is a tutorial mob, it should be possible to defeat it. Reducing its HP, the only problem is that the golem's weak point is in a very high place, and unlike in the game, he cannot jump that high. Returning to run, our boy aims for the monster's foot, concluding afterward, after firmly planting his shoe on the ground, that he will have to lower his target. With one leg less, the creature loses its balance and falls. Jumping in the air with a sparkle in his eyes, Ki says this is the end, driving his hammer into the red core immediately afterward. The large golem's eyes go dark, and with 37 seconds remaining, our boy completes the first stage. Raising the hammer, he says it was all thanks to it. Amidst so many rewards, drool drips from the protagonist's mouth as he reads that the Dragon Eye skill has been unlocked and that all other attributes are at level A. The problem now is that this was only the first stage, and even in the old version of the game, it took him a month to complete. We are taken to a forest, where blows and more blows hit beyond structures. Disgusting creatures made of green slime. We see that Ki has already defeated a bunch of them. Laughing, he says that this is very easy, and that he can see the enemy, even if it tries to hide. All thanks to the Dragon Eye. Suddenly, something catches the young man's attention. After stabbing his knife into a tree, he claims he can see the mana flow, the fleeing creature, very well. After knocking down the dark aura 3 times, he manages to unlock the hidden mission once again, which aims to defeat Naden. In the air, the creature says that the boy could have just ignored her and moved on. But he chose to be arrogant, so if he wishes to die, she will help him. Looking ahead, the green woman notices that Ki has vanished. But before she can figure out where he is, she receives a fatal blow. That makes her plummet to the ground. Split in half, she says that if this were her true body, she would be dead. Smiling, the protagonist says he is not the same as at the beginning of the tutorial, but he will be back soon to get her. Upon completing the last phase of the tutorial, he earns more and more rewards and begins to be transferred to a village. Excited, Kang states that it is time to level up. The protagonist returns to the building's parking lot and, after looking around, decides to check what day it is. Shocked to discover that 3 months have already passed, he decides to go after survivors to find out the current situation. We are taken to a high school in Seoul where a group of people is gathered. Some young people ask a police officer sitting on the floor what to do. However, the man stands up and says that there is only 1 day left to clear the dungeon. The officer is introduced as Oh Daewoo. A young man grabs his coat and asks if he is going crazy since he wants to invade an E-level dungeon. Holding the young man's fist, the guy says he is also scared, but that is the only way out. We find out that the panic is because the dungeon is in the process of breaking and its level is slowly rising. About to reach rank D. Even knowing that everyone there is weak, the police officer says that if another break happens, everyone will be done for. Suddenly, Gon Ji-won asks why that dungeon is growing so fast. Explaining, Daewoo says it is because the monsters inside are zombies, leaving everyone even more confused. He then explains that the zombies contaminate players through bites, turning them into monsters. Thus, since that dungeon has appeared before, those who did not save themselves became zombies. Determined, the police officer states that everyone there has already lost a lot, but they must fight to protect the loved ones that remain and themselves. We discover that in that world, dungeons are like homework. Running the law officer thinks that even though his plan is reckless, it is necessary, and even if they do not have the best ranked member in the group, they have Choi Hana. After everyone enters, we are taken to the IFOG building, where besides everything being destroyed, many corpses are on the floor. After closing the eyes of a little boy, Kang says he needs to find living players. Quickly, he reaches the red portal of the school, being the most dangerous as there are many mobs and it is 1 step away from turning black, which is when the dungeon breaks. A message appears warning that there are only 24 hours left until that happens. Seeing that the firewood is still warm, the protagonist concludes that a group entered not long ago and feels relieved to know that there are still many hours remaining. However, suddenly the hours begin to decrease rapidly, which means that the number of monsters is growing in. If it is like the game, according to Key, the break will occur very soon. Determined to prevent everyone from dying and to find out why that is happening, he passes through the portal without thinking twice, arriving next in an empty classroom that is much larger. Due to the expansion phenomenon that occurs in high-level dungeons, knowing that his level is not the best, our boy concludes that he cannot let his guard down, but suddenly, a skeleton with a cursed spirit bursts from the ground. Looking at the creature, he says it is as if he is in a horror movie. With its red eyes and open mouth, the monster jumps. Fortunately, Kang is still quick enough to strike and insert his sword into the skeleton's mouth to avoid being bitten. Using all the strength he has, he says he needs to get rid of the cursed spirit that is in the neck area, which means he will have to dismantle the bag of bones. With a precise strike, the protagonist hits the target, which breaks in 2. Excited, he says he missed that level up sound, which stopped appearing when he reached level 30. Suddenly, other skeletons appear, grabbing his sword. Sejun says he was starting to wonder why it was taking so long. Running, he shows determination to complete the surprise attack task, which is finished a few minutes later through many strikes and flying bones. Upon earning the title of Master of Surprise Attacks, the protagonist says that this is a gold mine, concluding next, upon seeing other mobs already dead, that he will have to postpone leveling up for now. Elsewhere, part of Daewoo's group manages to escape an explosion, while the other part pleads for help. We are taken back an hour, when things were going well, and the players, besides working together, Kakao and Hana, who made a point of taking care of her allies. However, suddenly someone causes a huge explosion with just a snap of their fingers. Startled, the police officer says it is better for them to separate, while wondering who the guys in green robes are, who do not seem to be mobs as they are too powerful. Trying to come up with a plan, the man concludes that he needs to get out of there with those who remain. Thus, he shouts for the young people to run as fast as they can. Noticing that the enemies are targeting a high-level player, the officer says that the situation is dangerous. However, out of nowhere, one of the masked figures appears and asks if he thinks he can escape. With his weapon, Daewoo strikes a blow and is shocked when the mysterious player reveals that he knows his name. Causing another explosion, the masked figure says he is disappointed, then stating that the man runs away like a cockroach. Lifting the Wave Rider's spear, which he received as a reward, the officer thinks that this should be able to damage the player. Thus, he advances and asserts that no matter how skilled the enemy is, he won't be able to create an explosion on himself, showing that the man is wrong. The guy snaps his fingers, causing another boom that throws the officer hard against a wall. On the ground, he concludes that he doesn't have enough power. The masked figure says that the detective has lost his touch since the last time they met. Hearing that voice, Daewoo was transported back to the past, when he was watching a live prison break and reporters were desperately trying to find out why the criminal did what he did. His eyes fill with rage. Seeing the reaction, the player reveals his face, unveiling himself as Hwang Dong-soo, a serial killer. We learn that the criminal killed 7 people and our law officer worked very hard to capture him 8 years ago. In despair, the officer refuses to believe that more people like him are still out there. The killer asks if he is waiting for a savior or something like that, then stating that no one will come because his friends have taken care of everyone. Suddenly, an explosion occurs. Emerging from the wall, Kang is happy to find living people, but finds it strange to notice that there is a masked guy among them. The dude inside the room looks back. Confused, the protagonist wonders if the two are fighting. The officer tells the young man to run away, but Gong is quicker and snaps his fingers, causing another explosion. As Daewoo wonders if this is the end, our boy appears safe and sound, thinking about how the man in the green robe seems to be involved in this. With his sword in hand, he says that compared to the labyrinth, this fight will be easy, then asserting while jumping to dodge another explosion that he will not lose. We discover that the criminal is considered a red player, a term used to refer to people deemed evil. Running, Kang concludes that the dead people there were eliminated by the masked man. Huang says he will let the young man go if he leaves right now. Shouting, the officer says that is a lie and reveals the enemy's identity. Preparing to attack again, the protagonist states that in any case, he wasn't planning to leave an opponent behind, and with his danger detection ability and dragon eye, charges forward, but from another masked figure who was invisible. Thus, with the death of Kang Woo-jong, he earns a sturdy t-shirt. Looking back, our boy tells the gang leader that it is time for him to take responsibility that comes with great power. Shocked, the guy asks how he discovered all of that. Grabbing another weapon, he attacks once more and asserts that adding the isolation ability would greatly enhance security. The one eliminated this time is Jim Young-sang. Running again, he says it is time for Dong-soo. When asked to wait, our boy questions if the man waited before attacking the other players. The criminal manages to activate an ability that launches him far away. In that moment, the protagonist decides to retrieve his dagger and charge again, this time in the air. With a precise strike, a trail of strawberry juice appears. Wounded, the man begins to fall backward until he crashes face first into the ground. Seeing that he leveled up, the protagonist decides not to feel bad for having killed the group of assassins and states that he finally understands why they were in such a hurry. Sometime later, Daewoo introduces himself and says that the criminal killed his sister, then thanking the young man for the rescue. Seo-jun says it was nothing, and the man says he would like to ask a favor, because in the midst of the ambush, he realized there were at least 10 enemies. The information leaves Ki surprised, explaining the law officer says that all the prisoners who escaped became players, and besides having some powerful item, they are targeting the shooter Clark. With his mouth agape at the next revelation, the protagonist questions how Clark is TRYHARD. The dude decides to leave the place they were in, carrying the bodies of the criminals on their backs. Still shocked, the protagonist says he would never have imagined that the shooter would be a girl. The officer says he was also surprised when he found out, especially since the young woman is an incredible singer. We learn that when it comes to firearms, there is no one better than Clark. Pulling the young man out of his reverie, the man says that carrying the bandits really makes a difference, since no mobs attack them on the way. We see that the duo is using the skills of the deceased guys, which will only stop working in 24 hours. Sometime later, they arrive at the academy and find mobs and players scattered across the floor. Looking at the panel, the officer comments that there are only 3 hours left until the dungeon breaks. Our boy concludes that someone is speeding up the process for the dungeon grass, a flower created with grass and water from the dungeon. Knowing that it is only possible to get the water in dungeons of rank B or higher, Ki says that apparently there's a player who has been playing long enough to receive the item as a reward, which means that there is someone big involved. We see Hana running to save herself from arrows that keep flying in her direction. Looking up, she says that the masked ones are only aiming at her instead of hitting the Death Knight. With his weapon, the boss attacks fiercely. While defending herself, the young woman says that the monster is terrible at defending and uses sword skills that are easy to read. Therefore, her only problem there are the archers. Screaming, she asks how the bandits can shoot at such a beautiful girl like her, then asserting that she will kill them all, even knowing they are real people. Hesitant to kill humans, Choi tries to concentrate and concludes that she has no choice but to take down the enemy that is ahead. The masked one is hit squarely by a bullet and falls to the ground. Even so, the others decide to keep shooting. With Yang's death, the idol gains the item Poison Potion. Startled, she realizes that her hiding spot will collapse soon and asks herself why her HP is decreasing even when she dodges the attacks. Suddenly, she notices that there are only 3 hours left until the break and is confused about the reason for the acceleration. When discovered by the Death Knight, Choi runs away once again, while thinking about how she needs to defeat the enemy if she doesn't want to face a D or a class monster. With only one choice in hand, she stops running and decides to shoot. A warning appears saying that the knight will disappear for 5 seconds. Taking advantage of the chance she has, the player activates her Bun Blood skill, which creates a large red sphere through her weapon. Thus, when the monster returns, she gets close enough and fires the shot into her opponent's back, while reflecting that she only has that chance since her current body won't hold up for long. Suddenly, Kai shouts for her to get out of there. Hannah misses the shot and, having no more stamina, claims that she will die there. Fortunately for her, a barrier is created by the protagonist, who not only saves her from the fatal blow, but also holds her in the air. When they return to the ground, the protagonist asks if the player is okay, Still in shock, Choi prepares to ask something, but something starts happening with the Death Knight, who, after undergoing transformation, becomes even more terrifying. In her thoughts, the girl says that now that the creature has evolved to Class D, it will be impossible to defeat it. But there is still time. Looking at the young man and the man, she says that both must leave the dungeon, since the only thing left to do is flee. However, seeing that the masked ones have also disappeared, Hana concludes that they will try to prevent them from leaving, with the current problem being to save the people. Seeing Ki going in another direction, she asks if he is crazy for wanting to fight with just a sword. Looking at his equipment, the protagonist asks for Daewoo's weapon. The latter says that the item is level 80. Not caring, our boy grabs the Wave Rider's spear, which, if incompatible with the user, does not express its true power and remains sealed. Thinking, the player says that since the young man activated the spear and managed to grab it while his skill was activated, it means that he is very powerful and a high-level player. Throwing something to Choi, the protagonist asks her to drink the liquid, before charging at the Demon Lord with the smile on his face. Feeling the approach, the creature strikes its first blow. Using his Dragon Eye, he discovers that his opponent's weakness remains the same and activates the spear, causing water to surround the monster. The funnel covers the entire body of the boss. Still, he manages to use his sword. While dodging, our boy concludes that the creature still needs time to adjust, which means it is possible to kill it. Suddenly, several shots are fired. Approaching, Hana asks who the guy is to have such a high-level potion. The protagonist tells the girl to hurry up before her HP is completely consumed. Jumping in the air, the player asserts that she is not doing it because he told her to. Then she fires several times at the Demon Lord, stating that the monster will remain still for 3 seconds. Kai seizes the opportunity to attack with waves of ice. The spear is thrown towards the weak point and, hitting it squarely, leaves holes in the boss's body. The boss cannot withstand it and begins to fall, until it crashes to the ground and disappears. With the victory, Seojun levels up several times, and thus the school dungeon is completely cleared. Outside, the thugs prepare to kill Clark. With the delay, a man says that the young girl must have passed away inside. Agreeing, a guy in a black robe says it would be difficult for the girl to defeat a D-class boss. However, suddenly a message arrives announcing that the dungeon rupture has been cancelled. Shocked, the group leader says that this is impossible, and checking his phone, he discovers that Blacklist has disappeared from the maze of choice and tells everyone to retreat. Once Kay appeared, the protagonist returns Daewoo's spear while thanking him. Hana gathers her courage and, approaching, asks if he is Kay. Our boy looks at her firmly and affirms that she is correct. But he is interrupted by the police officer, who says that even though the young man is impressive, Kay has not yet escaped from the maze of choice, and even if he had exited, he would not go there. Agreeing, the player thinks that the only reason she went there was to meet the boy, but apparently she misunderstood things. With flushed cheeks, she decides to thank the protagonist for saving her. Our boy says it's all right and that they should go after the other survivors. We are taken inside an abandoned storage room within the school. The officer says he is happy to see the young people, as he was worried that everyone might be dead. A guy apologizes and says they should have helped more. Kang observes the detective interrogating the group to see how everyone is doing, and thinks to himself that he is glad the team escaped to protect themselves, and that the officer is there. A girl calls Hana and asks if she's okay. The young girl says yes. The police officer approaches and says it's time to go to the camp. Even not knowing what it is about, Ki decides to accept the invitation. Next, we see him and the girl taking care of the mobs outside, until they reach the Banjo station. Thinking, the protagonist concludes that the creatures would hate to enter an area like that and decides that this place was indeed a good choice. Upon seeing the detective, the civilians cheer. The man says he is happy that everyone there is safe. An old man approaches and says he is glad he is safe. Noticing the sadness in Daewoo's eyes, he says he will prepare some food. Going to Seojun, the officer asks him to rest and eat something. The protagonist finally sits down and says that although the battle was not difficult, his body is starting to feel tired. Determined not to let his guard down, he remembers that he did not check the reward he earned earlier, discovering next that it is the Blade of Regret from Von Dissy. Frustrated, our boy realizes that even using all his points, he will not surpass level 100. Which means that the detective can only use the spear because he receives a small penalty. Picking up the sealed book, he says that the problem is that his reward is not just a weapon, but rather the reason he reached the top one. Smiling, Kang says he will have to work harder. Then picking up a cute little creature with a blue and white tail, he pokes the creature's nose and says it has been a while. Grigory quickly awakens after sensing the presence and runs away from the boy, who is left confused about the reason. A message appears warning that the little one needs to eat. We discover that Gorong used to follow Ki in the first version of the game, and there is only one reason for it to be acting this way. That is the fact that there is a dungeon nearby. Standing up, our boy says that the situation is calm since the little creature has not assumed its true form. Since it is a dungeon-devouring monster, it is revealed that the protagonist obtained the little animal by reaching level 50 and chose it as a reward before the server shutdown. But now he needs to figure out why the little one started reacting in the middle of that crowd. Looking at the other players, Seojun wonders if they are in fact skeletons. concluding next that the creatures do not possess such intelligence, which means there's something wrong with the hamster or something hidden in that place. Determined to trust Gorong's instincts, our boy walks a bit further and spots a guy on the ground who doesn't seem to be doing well. He then heads over to the rest of the group. They are in the middle of a discussion about whether or not to kill skeletons. Daewoo says they can't stay hidden because when the creatures disperse, many people died and that might be their only chance to level up. Since with the dungeon destroyed in the sunlight, the undead are weaker. Even so, the man says he won't force anyone. Sometime later, we see that the hunting team and the camp defense team have been defined. Interrupting the protagonist's thoughts, the officer says that before they leave, they should introduce themselves to the newcomer. Upon hearing that the man is from the special units, our boy concludes that he has the most potential there. While wondering why Gong introduced himself as if he were a scout, Choi also introduces himself and says he's good with weapons, even though he's the only one there that everyone already knows. Next is Jang Gyong, who can only brag about how rich he is. Thinking, Ki says that although the armor the guy is wearing is expensive, he doesn't seem to be a good player. Smiling, the policeman says that Soo-joon's face is definitely new to everyone there. Before he can say his name, he is interrupted by the rich kid. Confused, the protagonist asks how the guy knows him. Responding, he says he knows he was from banjo school. In the blink of an eye, Kang remembers that this was the bully who used to bother him at school. Jang says he recognized him by his eyes, while the protagonist says the young man seems like a different person. Putting his hand on our boy's shoulder, the bully asks if he remembers when he used to bring snacks. Pulling the guy's hand away, Hana asks what he thinks he's doing, then asserting that Soo-joon is the reason they are alive, so the young man should apologize. Determined to end the argument, the protagonist finally introduces himself as Ki. Everyone stares at him in silence, before they ask how he is K. With his mouth agape, Choi says he knew his intuition was right. Interrupting the pleasant moment, the armored guy says the protagonist is lying, but he starts to change his mind upon seeing the shirt with the demon lord's face that he is wearing. Determined to prove his point, he asks what level Kang is. Upon hearing 37, the young man asks if he is so bored that he's making up a story, since the number one player isn't even Korean. Sometime later, they head to the streets. Using his Dragon Eyes ability, our boy guides the group towards the enemies. While the bully wonders how he knows all this, seeing a sea of undead, Daewoo throws his spear, while asking the others to make sure to pair up. The problem is that there are too many enemies for too low resistance. Clark appears and asks one of the young men to rest, firing shortly after. Irritated, Jiyoung tells Ki to get out of his way and watch how a professional acts. Thus, after taking care of some skeletons, he raises his sword and says that this is the difference between them. Thinking, the protagonist says that the guy used to make him buy snacks with 50,000 won because he didn't know how much bread cost. Thus, he made some money thanks to the bully, so he should focus on something more important than fighting. We see that Gorong has already consumed everything he found, including a sword. Approaching, the protagonist asks if the creature smells something tasty around. After sniffing a bit, the hamster reveals he found something to the southeast. The skeletons realize they have been discovered, but it's too late. Throwing one of the skulls, our boy realizes that this was his pet's objective. When the sun sets, it's time to go back. While some are happy about leveling up, Daewoo seems worried for not knowing exactly what Kang is doing. The young man finds himself fighting with Gorong, who suddenly shows that he found something interesting. Approaching the detective, who was about to leave with the others, the protagonist suggests they take a look at the flower shop. Inside, everyone smells a horrible odor and covers their noses, in case it's poison. A message appears notifying them that they have discovered the E-Class Mortal Garden dungeon and now have the mission to eradicate the virus, taking great care not to get infected. Soo-joon concludes that the people who were unwell at the station were infected by the virus. It is revealed that there is a wide variety of dungeons within the game, including those of the Mortal Garden, that when they suffer a break, releases spore virus instead of mobs that infect the players. Thus, when infected, a person turns into a parasite and transforms other humans into monsters. Knowing that there are infected people inside the station, the protagonist concludes that he needs to resolve the situation quickly. A young man shouts and says that when night falls, the mobs will become stronger, so it's better for them to leave. Disagreeing, the police officer says that the red portal means the dungeon will break soon, and since they didn't find the place earlier, the best option is to face it. Kang agrees, and then part of the group passes through the portal. The cornet walks through the forest, and thought, Daewoo says that this is the best alignment and he can't ask for anything more. It is revealed that the plan is to make a small-scale attack, and those who were not selected return to the camp, that the only reason Jang was selected was because of his equipment. The young man interrupts the man's thoughts and says they should have brought someone better than Kang, showing that he doesn't understand that he is the weakest link in the group. When touched again, the protagonist tells the young man not to do that anymore. The young man then says he wanted to grab the apple that was near him, as it is a good item to restore HP. Suddenly, something hits the fruit before he takes the first bite. Hana, responsible for the shot, tells the young man to be more careful with what he puts in his mouth. A bit embarrassed, he thanks her while the officer concludes that he made the wrong decision. Quickly, the group arrives at the boss room, known as the King of Plants, a kind of sunflower that usually observes players while waiting for their deaths. The protagonist says that as soon as they defeat the king, they will obtain an item that serves as an antidote for the dungeon disease, which will cure those who are infected at the station. Daewoo says that this is their only hope. Smiling, Jueong asserts that everyone can trust him. Suddenly, the smell worsens, and Hana wonders why that is if they are in the middle of flowers. The king of plants watches the quartet. Then it launches thorny tentacles from its mouth. The team manages to escape, but the ground shatters. Screaming, the police officer asks if everyone's okay. Out of nowhere, something hits the boss. We see that the bullet fired by Choi cut off one of the tentacles. Before the armored guy could mess things up, Kang pulls him by the cape and throws him back, then stating that the young man should look down. Eliminating the enemy, our boy says it's better not to approach recklessly, concluding then that they need to find a way to reach the boss. Daewoo says it would be better to trust Hana, thinking our boy says that under the right conditions, she will be able to defeat the king. The girl asks if the protagonist has more potions, and with confirmation, she asks for another vial. However, Ki denies and says that the item is too precious to just hand over. Leaving everyone shocked, he heads towards the plants, causing a rain of tentacles to happen. Convinced, the officer says he now believes the young man is indeed Ki. Jang refuses to believe it, but the man says that either the young man is at a very high level, or he possesses extraordinary abilities. Our boy comes face to face with the king, who again launches thorny tentacles from its mouth. Screaming, Kang delivers a fatal blow that splits the boss in half, leaving his group completely stunned. Immediately, the messages notifying about the rewards start coming in. The team finally exits the shop. The police officer notices that the protagonist is deep in thought. Reflecting, our boy says that Kakashi's thorn gauntlet can be used with a short sword, which will be useful since he has no weapon restrictions due to his celestial body skill. Furthermore, it is revealed that with his current level and points, defeating D-class dungeons will soon be possible, reducing the gap that exists between the protagonist and the other players. With wide eyes, Jeong still tries to understand how the young man is K. Choi asks everyone to stop as there are signs of battle in that place. Approaching the bodies, the police officer says that something happened to the camp. Everyone heads towards the station, which seems to be empty. Looking around, Seojun spots footprints on the ground that do not follow just one direction, but move back and forth. Interrupting the officer's shouts, he says that the cause of this is the dungeon disease, since there are no signs of skeletons. While the armor boy tries to process the situation, Hana asks how this is possible that the dungeon has been cleared. Suddenly, a voice emerges asking for help. Pulling a boy from the rubble, Daewoo asks him to wake up. The protagonist opens his panel but discovers he needs a revitalization potion to save the young man, because his legs are in critical condition. With nothing else to do, he gives him a potion to ease the pain. As he drinks the liquid, the boy seems to awaken. Desperate, the detective asks what happened. The young man says everything happened very quickly and that a large monster appeared on the stairs. Even though they were prepared for external threats, the other players behind them turned into zombies, which forced them to flee. A message appears warning that the player is in a state of madness. Our boy concludes that without a healer, there is nothing that can be done, and upon reflecting more on the players turning into monsters, realizes that the dungeon's disease has reached stage 3. We discover that as the infection progresses, the body of the infected person deteriorates until they become a monster. Thus, since the garden was cleared, it means someone is doing this on purpose. The injured boy begins to plead for something from the detective. Before completely passing out, he stands up. Daewoo says it's time to go to the bottom of the station, where the true enemy seems to be hiding. After a few minutes of walking, the quartet runs into zombies. After firing, Hana says that people who have already transformed cannot be cured, which is why she did what she did. A bit sad, Kang realizes that these are the bodies of those who couldn't escape. The officer suggests that each one take care of a zombie. Our boy takes the lead and shows how good he is with the sword. Turning around, he asks the others to follow him, thus assuming the position of leader. Everyone advances towards the tracks, until they reach Chinpom Station, considered a ghost station. Seeing the footprints, the officer says that people must have gone to Yangdong Post Station, since it was the designated location in case of emergency. Suddenly, Kei feels something and runs ahead. His sword meets the hands of a monster and a great impact occurs, followed by a flurry of blows. Daewoo asks everyone to prepare while Hana asks if this is what Jungwoo was talking about. The group quickly discovers that the zombie is Joyeon. Our boy says that the young woman is gone and all that remains is to kill the creature to gain experience and items, while thinking that it was because of this disease that thousands of players died in the first version of the game. The difference is that this time, the fate of the world is in their hands. The enemy advances and Ki concludes that he must end this quickly. He delivers a kick, but realizes that the creature is quite resilient. The monster lunges with both hands. Using his sword, the protagonist sends arms and strawberry juice flying everywhere. However, Joyeon launches another arm that comes out of her mouth. The officer says he will help him, but the young man tells him to stay back, since he wouldn't be able to handle a monster of that level. Dodging another attack, Seojun tries to find an opening, finding one right on top of the zombie's head. The creature looks back as he apologizes, then delivering a blow that would make anyone lose their head. Everyone watches the monster on the ground, thinking our boy says that normally he wouldn't be able to handle a creature like that. but he raised all his attributes to 100 during the tutorial, and if he uses the level up points, he will become 3 times stronger. The officer interrupts the boy's train of thought to warn that enemies are approaching. A sea of monsters emerges, showing that dungeons do not wait for players. Daewoo is shocked to realize that everyone is in stage 3 of the disease, which means they have lost all humanity. After feeling something strange, Hana asks her allies to move away from the back, but discovers they are surrounded. Determined to understand how this situation occurred, the protagonist says they need to focus on the fight. Jang delivers his first blow as a monster gets too close. The problem is that the attack only serves to make the creature angrier. Ki appears and manages to prevent the boy from passing away. Then he asks the player if she is sure the others went to Yeondeon Post Station. She confirms, and the protagonist then says they should go there too. Disagreeing, Choi says it's dangerous, and besides, something worse is waiting for them there. Daewoo approaches and asks what the do is talking about, but the young people only say they will explain later. Taking the lead, Kang says that for now it's better if they don't distance themselves from him. We discover that stage 3 of the disease causes the infected to take on different forms. This includes wings, extra arms, or extra legs. Additionally, some lose or gain weight, with the most interesting fact being that people evolve based on their desires. Therefore, in cases where there is more than one eye, it means that the human desired to see more or was blind. The monster lunges at our boy, who manages to dodge by jumping in the air, then using the light from his cell phone to blind his opponent. Delivering a fatal blow, he says that everything becomes easier when you understand the desires of the monsters. The sword ends up breaking with the attack. The police officer asks if the young man wants his spear, but he says he has his items and will be fine. With not much to do, he activates Kakashi's Thorn Gauntlet to test what it is capable of. With a single strike, Ki wipes out a zombie, then asserting that his items are better. Meanwhile, Jang screams and asks the detective for help. Suddenly, the protagonist warns everyone to be careful as they are approaching the boss's territory, revealing that his name is Gachalitor, a level 35 creature that emerged after the Dungeon of the Garden broke, because someone fed the target with the dungeon flower, creating a trigger that acts as a source for the disease. Thus, if they do not stop the trigger, the infection will consume soul. After walking a bit more, Seojun steps in a slime and when illuminating the front reveals the monster's hideout, which is holding a man while he begs for help. The creature is quick and finishes its snack, then asking if it should eat more and requesting everyone to subscribe and activate the notification bell. We see that this is not the first snack the monster has had. Seeing strawberry juice everywhere, the protagonist says that it is horrible, while the police officer asks what the trigger is. Kang says he is not sure, but it is something related to the human's desire before turning into a monster. Hana says that, putting together everything they have seen along the way, it seems that someone intentionally placed the trigger inside the station. Analyzing the enemy, our boy says that it must be above level 100, and even though it is slow, it does not have statistics lower than theirs. We discover that Dreamside is not a game that can be won just because the player is at a higher level or has good attributes. Since each monster has its own characteristics and buffs, it can be strong even at a low level. The protagonist then says that the mob is either very strong or has most of its attributes concentrated in health. Tired of the chatter, the monster decides to make the first move. Holding his spear, Daewoo says he is sure that this is Choi Manki. Agreeing, Jang says that it is definitely that YouTuber who should be in jail, since he was sentenced to death after a certain broadcast where he proved to have eaten human flesh. The creature continues asking everyone to like and subscribe, before delivering another blow with its transformed hands. Running, the bully says that the enemy is very fast and is soon saved by the officer. Worried, the man says that the opponent can move its arms freely, so everyone must be careful. Suddenly, a hand appears behind Ki, making him conclude that lowering his guard there is asking to die. After stepping back a bit, the officer says that to buy time, he needs to draw the monster's attention. His spear gets stuck in the creature's mouth and shouting, he asks Seojun to act. Appearing in the air, the protagonist delivers a punch using the gauntlet. The monster mocks, saying how the second attempt didn't work, recovering quickly afterward. Then the quartet concludes that the creature is imitating the way it killed the person before ending up in jail. The next attack leaves the group in the enemy's hands. Then he starts aiming at Hana, stating that today's meat will be that of an idol. Firing with his weapon, the girl asks if he really thought she would be defeated so easily. Kang says that the opponent concentrated all his attributes on health, concluding that to eat, one needs endurance. Looking at Choi, he shares the plan and thus both charge forward. The girl fires once more after managing to get close enough. The shot hits the monster's face while Ki prepares to attack from the other direction. Using the gauntlet, he strikes the target directly. The problem is that nothing happens, and besides regenerating, the creature counterattacks. Suddenly, something appears on the side of the enemy's face, making everyone realize that, in fact, the boy's attack did work. A red aura surrounds the creature's body. It attacks again with its blade-like hand. Daewoo says that at this rate, they might be able to defeat it. However, the protagonist says that the enemy won't die from small attacks like that, and then they come up with a plan. Sometime later, we see Jang face to face with the monster. Screaming, he asks how much more the creature can eat without getting stuck. In response, the creature opens its mouth full of teeth and lunges forward. It is at this moment that the officer appears and uses his blade to prevent the mouth from closing. Now it's Hana's turn, who, upon hearing the command, shoots. Then the boss closes its mouth and a blue light begins to shine all over its body. Screaming, the player calls for Seojun. We are taken back to moments earlier when the protagonist asked the others to distract the enemy, so he could use his points to level up and unlock some abilities, including the magic concentration ability, which will be used to deliver the final blow. Face to face with his opponent, our boy says that if the enemy is strong, he needs to be stronger. The monster traps him using its own body. Still, the protagonist activates the gauntlet and delivers the attack, leaving the enemy with 2 fewer arms. Charging forward, the young man claims he will enjoy and subscribe as requested, then delivering 2 fatal blows that bring the monster to the ground. With victory over the hunger trigger, he levels up once again and gains the Attention Hunter ring. The YouTuber's body begins to return to normal due to the disappearance of mana. Thinking, the protagonist concludes that he needs to find out who is responsible for all of this. Suddenly, a mark on the enemy's body catches his attention. We are taken to another place, where a hooded figure watches everything through a crystal ball. Surprised, he says that this is the first time he has seen someone capable of using such a strong attack. Another person appears and says that he always acts as if he is the only one busy. It is Kang Minho, a member of the company. Bog Jikchin stares at the young man without saying anything. We discover that this association is the dark side of Dreamside, as it is responsible for expanding the dungeons, putting people in danger. Moreover, all members have a lightning bolt crossing 2 moons tattooed. The member with glasses asks the guy with black hair to take a look at the images. However, he says that Ki is alive and that he found out through the report of a rookie who was sent to the Labyrinth of Choice. Therefore, even though there is a possibility that the number 1 has died, they need to be sure. Ba says that, in fact, it is necessary to find the entire group of Kang. Minho asks why his ally is so worried, since the young man is just a rookie who just finished the tutorial. It is necessary to inform the superiors about the matter before taking action. Back at the station, we see Gong running for his life, while the creatures try to catch him at all costs. Still in shock from everything he saw, the young man says he ran in the wrong direction and needs to go back to find the detective. Suddenly, a train appears out of nowhere. Even without understanding why there is a train in a ghost station, the boy decides to get in to save himself and seek answers later. The monsters are left behind, and a message appears notifying that the subway is departing. Taking a deep breath, Ji-won realizes that he might be able to return to the Yeongdeung Post Station, if nothing bad happens, of course. To his surprise, a message appears notifying that the train is, in fact, a Rank D dungeon. Meanwhile, the quartet of heroes continues running. Jang finally realizes and gets excited to know that he is indeed facing Lord Ki, while Hana wonders if the young man has been infected by the dungeon's disease. Daewoo says he doesn't believe there are any survivors, but our boy insists that there definitely are, since someone is deliberately letting some people escape to spread the infection, until a new trigger is created. Thinking, the protagonist says he doesn't know who is responsible, but he won't let them escape, especially if the company is involved. We discover that the organization's members are capable of creating missions and recruiting players, until one day in the game he managed to eliminate them. Disrupting the group's plans was his personal pleasure, but now that everything has turned real, he needs to keep an eye on the players who are part of the group. The quartet manages to reach the ghost station and find the supplies that were hidden in case of emergency the last time the survivors were there. Seeing that some things are missing, the officer says that someone has been there. The protagonist asks if the people at Banjo Station have become players, excluding the elderly and children. Hana appears and says that the internet has been cut off, which prevented some survivors from contacting others. But she, having recently updated her phone, is able to reach people who have a watch like hers. Then the young woman says that the only way to become a player is to go to the Ark, the last stronghold located within Seoul. Meanwhile, at Banjo Station, the group of hooded figures assesses the situation. Yu Bamboo, leader of the third team, concludes that Bea was right. A message appears asking everyone aboard the train. Confused, the young man asks why the train is on line 1 when it should be on 10. A masked figure says it's possible that the lines were connected by the workers, then asking why they don't board the train to go to the ghost station. Yoon asks if the young man wants to die, since they can't handle a D-rank dungeon. Thinking, he reveals that he joined the organization because he wants to stay alive, which is why he refuses to die there. Telling his insistent subordinate to shut up, the leader says that even if they don't board the train, if the target group gets on, they will be caught by the goblins. Hana says she needs to update her receiver and phone, which is why they decided to head in that direction. Kei adds that it's possible the survivors have headed towards the Ark. Detective and Jang Jiang begin to walk in search of the survivors. While the characters talk, Gorong emerges from the protagonist's pocket upon smelling food. The little creature's reaction makes Kei realize there is someone else in that place. The small animal uses its sense of smell to guide the group. Hana asks why the survivors are fleeing from them, and Detective replies that they might be scared. He says they are the only people in that place and anyone could recognize that they are human. The young man contemplates that despite not having said it before, it's possible that the people they are following are not the survivors from Banjo Station. He comes to this conclusion because the supposed survivors have slowed their escape as if trying to lure the group. The four fighters finally reach a waiting room. An arrow is shot at Jang Jeong and nearly pierces his eye, but Ki intercepts it in time. Suddenly, a cloud of smoke begins to fill the area. Other arrows are shot towards the team members, who use their skills to dodge the attacks. Hamina is almost hit by a projectile but manages to destroy it in time. The team continues to advance while dodging several arrows, until finally, Kai reaches one of the creatures responsible for the attacks. It is a kobold. The protagonist wonders if there has been an outbreak. He shouts for Hana not to shoot the creature, but it's too late, as the girl has already fired. The bullet grazes the kobold's arm. Hana says she had a bad feeling, which is why she didn't aim to hit it directly. With an admiring look, Jang Jeong says he trusts Ki's judgment. The protagonist then explains that this creature is not a monster. It is a person. He points to the creatures around and says that all the kobolds are people. A kobold wearing a pilot's hat and goggles asks if the group is part of the station workers' team. The adventurers are surprised by the question. The creature speaks again, introducing itself as Shin Hyunwoo, and reaffirms that it is not a monster. Detective whispers to Ki, asking if those are real people, as they seem like little monsters. The dark-haired boy explains that the names of the monsters appear in color on the holographic information panel. Then he asks what color appears for that specific aviator kobold's name. Detective exclaims in surprise. This is because when looking at the creature, a message appears in white letters indicating that it is a level 25 kobold. Kei continues his explanation, saying that the little creatures are players as the names of the greed appear in another color. Finally, he asks Shin Hyunwoo why the kobolds attack the adventurers with arrows and if they are enemies of humans. The little creatures deny having problems with humans. Then the protagonist asks again what made them attack. Shin Hyunwoo has a serious look and replies that they did it because of the worker. On one of the destroyed streets of the city, a holographic panel appears in front of a boy in a cap, informing him that channel 115 has been created with the name Earth. With a frightened expression, the boy reads the information and clicks confirm. Then the same boy is seen running through the streets with a sword in hand. Another hologram appears, this time with the message, rudimentary long sword. Now more determined, the boy decides that he shouldn't worry about the sword. He should just try to get used to that new reality. The young man begins to tell his story and says that he was addicted to the game Dream Sai before enlisting in the army and that he was at level 200. He already had several special items because of his high level. A memory of him in soldier's clothing appears as he continues his explanation. The game system crashed during the time he was in the military, and because of that, he couldn't register to recover his special items in the second version of the game. Surrounded by several monsters, he punches some of the beasts and says that he has experience, and that is better than having nothing. So when Dream Side 2 started, he joined the Yang Dumpo group. With the sword raised above his head, he shouts that everyone will fight together to survive. However, he had to make a difficult decision. With a shout, the young man crosses the portal. He falls on the other side and says that he almost died on those missions, but he managed to arrive alive. Continuing his story, he says that he was the only one to win at the normal difficulty level, so the group began to consider him a sort of leader. It turns out that he doesn't know how he could be the focus of the group if he could barely survive at the normal level. The truth was that without a high-level player, they wouldn't be able to survive. That's when a mysterious merchant appeared at the Yangdong Post Station. The young man says that he knew the group shouldn't accept the offers from the man with black hair, but he gave them many items and food in addition to being kind. The man constantly brought food and weapons to the group. Because of that, everyone was very grateful. And that's how they managed to survive. But the problem is that the merchant was a fraud. The survivors had no way to pay for the goods the man offered. He said that those things were an investment in the group's future, and that he just wanted to help. Returning to the main story, Shin Hyunwoo concludes by saying that the price charged by the merchant hid unexpected consequences. The survivors didn't know, but the food brought by the man contained some kind of drug. More than that, the contract that the group had signed had hidden information in small print. In the document, it was written that if those people didn't fulfill the agreement, they would have to give their bodies as payment. Upon hearing this part of the story, the other kobolds scream in horror. Shin Hyunwoo adds that the fake merchants stole their bodies. After the sellers, a figure known as the worker appeared. As defined in the contract, the worker appeared to collect the bodies of the survivors. Then the souls of those humans were placed into kobolds. And that was just the beginning. The worker returned to the station every week. He said he was there to collect the interest established in the contract. With that, he began to take the memories of the survivors. This information makes Ki realize that the lack of memory must be the reason why the other kobolds don't speak. The protagonist asks if anyone else has appeared around there. Shin Hyunwoo furrows his brow, not understanding. The hero specifies, asking if anyone from the Beju station appeared there or if the kobolds killed everyone as soon as they arrived. Ki asks what the debt amount and the interest for each person here are, to which Shin Hyunwoo replies that everyone owes only almost the same thing. Outraged, the dark-haired boy asks when the workers will return to that station. Unexpectedly, Shin Hyun-woo starts to stutter. He sees the workers and runs away. The sight of the two beasts shocks the protagonist, and he also runs to hide, and something within him changes. Hana asks if the boy is okay, as he doesn't seem well. The dark-haired boy replies that he is angry. He contemplates the information that the debt and interest charged by the merchants are the same for each of the survivors from the Yangdunpo group. Still, each of them has a different level of memory. He himself explains that it is because each person has a different amount of memories. Since he was 23 years old when transformed, Shin Hyun-woo still has many memories of his human life. Those with fewer memories were probably children. The detective questions if that is why Shin Hyun-woo seems so determined to get rid of the workers. He contemplates aloud about what happens to humans who lose their memories, and concludes that they become monsters. The detective comes to the conclusion that the kobolds are considered players precisely because they have human souls. The protagonist examines the area where the workers were. He sees a kobold with a bandana pressing a button. The smoke from before fills the room again, but this only irritates the giant beasts. One of the workers raises his large hammer and says that no one should try to stop them. However, shortly after, he is attacked by arrows and grenades. One of the beasts is hit, but it suffers no damage and does not even attempt to defend itself. The grenades are activated all at once, causing a massive explosion. Some of the more skilled kobolds celebrate, believing they have defeated the monsters. The blue-skinned worker emerges from the mist and grabs the kobold by the head. Looking into the eyes of the small creature, the beast delivers a blow. Ki, Hana, and the detective watch the scene in shock at the brutality. The worker eliminates the small kobold once and for all, saying that those who borrow money must pay. A disgusting, blue, muscular orc walks toward them. Its yellow eyes ignite. It leaps fiercely onto a wolf. Kang intervenes with a strike from his sword. The orc recognizes him, but before it can say anything, its flesh is torn apart. It howls in pain and its head falls off. Choi Hana, holding her weapon, asks if Kang is okay, and he says yes. Another orc of the same type appears in front of him, but he realizes it is a level 80 player. The creature glares at him and asks not to be disturbed. Kang asks if he is not human. But before he can respond, the young man grabs his enormous horn and throws his body hard to the ground. The impact of the blow destroys the floor and the orc's club flies far away. Kang picks up the weapon in his hands and with a leap plunges it into the creature. Without mercy, he crushes the monster's skull, driving the stone club deep. The player observes that the only way to become a goblin is by killing his own kind, unlike the kobolds. Looking to the side, Kang encounters flames. A colossal red goblin engulfed in fire walks toward him. Immediately, he activates his Dragon Eyes skill. The screen announces the second level 85 orc. He positions himself and asks Choi Hana to take care of the rest. Propelling his body forward like a rocket, Kang leaps like a true hero. He faces the terrifying gaze of the creature high above. His mechanical arm is activated. Pulling back, he gathers strength for a powerful punch. Finally, the boy drives his fist hard into the orc's face. The screen announces that the monster has been defeated. Kang levels up and receives a reward. In his hands, there is a contract. Reading it, he reflects that the agreement is unfair. According to the guidelines, the contractor has the right to use the contracted for sacrifice and work while the contracted must pay the contractor. Analyzing the paper, the boy wonders if there is no special item capable of blocking the contents of the contract. He gets irritated by this. Shrek Hana shoots at another one of the goblins as well. In the center of the hall, amidst the bodies of monsters, the four warriors wonder if they have managed to destroy all of them. Purple auras like smoke rise from the bodies, and Kang believes it to be the souls of the dead players. However, the monsters rise like ghosts anyway. Choi Hana asks her partner what is happening. Kang reads the contract again. The contract states that if the contracted causes any trouble to the workers, the contractor can exercise total authority over the contracted. An intense light emerges and the auras of the creatures begin to merge. Kang can hardly believe what he is seeing. A ball of energy forms above their heads, and it passes between them, following a direction. The boy suggests that they should follow it, whatever it is. Following the mass of light, he says that the children will be in danger if they do not do this. The group descends the stairs. They are surprised when they come across a train. Kang is intrigued. He says that this is line 10, but he does not know how it is still functioning. Something moves inside his pocket. A little blue creature jumps into his lap. It is a Gorong, and it is excited. The screen announces that all players must enter the train immediately before it departs. In front of the portal, Kang announces that this is a dungeon. The city of Dreamside appears, shining as Kang explains that dungeons are the objective of the game. They are everywhere and can appear in any form, including as boats, airplanes, and carriages. The train doors open. The young man realizes that this could be a moving dungeon. Choi Hana shouts a warning to Kang, pointing at the massive energy. The accumulated auras enter one of the train cars. The detective asks Kang what they should do, and the young man says he prefers to let him decide. He explains that if they enter, they will lose the opportunity to find the survivors from Station Banju. The detective observes that Shin Woo said there is no one left there. Still, even if there are survivors, he does not think they will ignore the Yangdong post station and should escape to the next one. Although it seems cruel, instead of checking people who may or may not be alive, he prefers to ensure that the children survive. Kang then agrees with the detective. The group finally enters the train car. Meanwhile, Gong Ji-won is going through a tough time. Becoming an instant level 52 target, he thinks he is going to die. The young man dodges yet another sudden attack. A terrifying goblin baby is in front of him, and there are many others. Without thinking too much, he wields his sword against the creature. Risking several strikes, none hit the monster. The creature mocks the boy with its stealthy movements like a demonic baby. Irritated, Ji-won tries to launch another attack. Once again, he suffers retaliation and dodges. Observing the behavior of the goblins, he realizes they are not attacking all at once, they are making a fool of him. While wasting time reasoning, he gets hit and falls to the ground. The screen announces that he has failed the mission and has become a target of the station attendant. A huge goblin in a suit and tie chases him. Ji-won tries to crawl, but the creature's hands are already on him. He is dragged by the monster to a strange place. Chained up, it doesn't take long for him to realize he is surrounded by zombies. Several chained humans groan in suffering, weakened and sick. Seeing this, the boy wonders where he is. It is the last train car, and the goblin babies continue to wreak havoc like spoiled and terrifying children. Suddenly, a door opens. 4 people watch the monsters with curiosity. It is Kang and his teammates. The boy observes the babies and remembers that even though they seem harmless, they are level 70 and love human flesh. TRYHARD notes that this looks more like a cargo compartment than a normal subway. Kang thinks this is a moving dungeon of classification D. This may influence the difference in how they appear on the outside and what they really are on the inside. Looking out the window, he says they are no longer underground. Kang knew this was not an ordinary dungeon. The mission began as soon as they entered the train. The screen announces that an attendant will check the ticket soon. If they do not have one, it will automatically become targets. The group stands before the evil babies. The fight begins as Kang beats down the little monsters. He says they must figure out the rules of the dungeon and resolve it. Upon killing one of the goblins, the screen announces that he received a ticket. Then TRYHARD does the same and also secures her passage. The detective kicks one of the goblin babies. Just like everyone in the group, analyzing the tickets, the 3 wonder if they managed to clear everything. However, Kang suddenly orders them to throw their tickets away. The boy explains that they do not have enough time to clear the dungeon car by car using conventional methods. With a smirk, he suggests they think outside the box. The Goron chews the tickets with its sharp teeth. TRYHARD asks if this way they won't become targets of the attendants, and Kang says that is exactly the goal. If their plan is to prevent the souls of the children from being taken, they need to be quick, and the best way is to attract the boss and defeat him. John draws attention and asks if something seems off about the behavior of those goblins. The creatures are hiding among the cargo. Intrigued, the knight asks if they are afraid of the boy, and he orders everyone to prepare. The huge goblin attendant walks toward Kang. He glares at him with evil eyes and asks for the ticket, but the boy replies that he does not have one. Activating his mechanical arm before the goblin finishes speaking, he is struck by a powerful punch. Enraged by the blow, the creature gets up and charges at him with agility, but he ends up tripping, causing him to hurt his face. With even more fury, he charges at the human, but suddenly the boy grabs one of his horns and delivers another super blow that sends him flying far away, in addition to using his fist to attack the creature with force. Then he asks if the goblin is his station attendant. Irritated, he asks why the creature is not responding. His friends watch closely. Key says that if the final objective was to defeat him, that mission would have been pointless. The goblin calls out to the boy once again, and the young man asks what is wrong with his eyes, which are a different color. The boy asks where the creature hid the weapons, but there is no answer, until he finally responds that he doesn't know. Not believing it, the boy insists on some answer. The goblin says that everything is in Area D, and that is all he knows. He confirms that the souls are there, and Key asks him to tell where the keys are. Since the creature can enter and exit Area F, it is possible to enter other areas without completing missions. So he tries his best to take the key from the creature. In the end, he manages to get what he desired, and he doesn't feel bad about it. One of his friends asks if that goblin was also a victim, but that one was different, as one cannot become a goblin by having their soul stolen. First of all, that would be equivalent to eliminating one's own species. Moreover, they need to eat human flesh. For the protagonist, this is a plausible reason not to treat goblins as humans. Now he has achieved the title of greatest speed as he wished. His experience points will increase by 2%. One of his colleagues says he heard that they cannot defeat themed dungeons without clearing the missions. And the boy explains that cleaning dungeons is at the player's capacity if they do something unconventional. To him, some people would call that cheating. More situations like that will happen. Now they manage to enter the safe area F5. There, a man who was eating peacefully notices the presence of the group. The young man looks at all the belongings of those men a bit nervously, and he realizes that they are probably merchants. With a stern expression, the man asks if the boy has a ticket. Key does not understand the merchant Song Dupol's comment, so he says he doesn't have any, causing the man to question him again. Song Dupol looks at the boy with irritation from head to toe. Suddenly, he asks the man if it isn't too hot that day. Then, enigmatically, Dupol asks the boy to follow him. One of the team members asks Hana to be ready. With a strange smile, the man tells them to enjoy something to eat after the long journey, but no one can understand what is happening. The man then introduces himself as Song and his partner as Kang. Then Seojun comments that there is something interesting in the goblin's bag. There is a secret code there. Chasing souls may not be the answer. They need to find a way to recover the souls of the children in their bodies. For that, they need to obtain information about the merchant's contract. Irritated, the merchant asks when the group realized his true intention. With a smile, he comments that that code is from last month. But the boy doesn't back down and makes a sarcastic remark, causing the man to get angry and order his team to deal with the group. But the boy's group is prepared and charges into the attack. As there is not enough time, one of them decides to ignore Miranda's rights. The men try to grab him, but the gray-haired man easily dodges. Thus, the gang was defeated, and Ki asks Song to tell everything he knows. But the man says the boy is not capable of facing Lord Jack, the 9th ranked. With a smile, he says Ki just declared war against Lord Jack, but the boy just smiles, leaving his team confused. He finds it hilarious that someone like this Jack is behind it all. There are two ways people describe this Jack. First, he is cruel, and one should never ask him for money. He has the best items in the world, appears wherever a customer needs him, and disappears as quickly as possible. The warrior says that this is the bastard who stole his items through trading fraud before the server ended and asks where he is. Suddenly, Song starts having something like a seizure and falls to the ground, and his soul begins to leave his body. He has lost his life, just like the kobolds. Hana asks if all of this was really caused by Jack. The other members cannot understand how this boy can be so bad. Noticing Hannah's irritation, the boy asks if she was also harmed by him and realizes that Jack deceived all the rankers. Since they have no evidence, the boy will only enter the list as a suspect. While he's freeing people, he notices that one is not tied up. He realizes that one of the items with this person is something rare, which only one person possesses. With a smile and a surprised voice, he says that is Jack, and he claims that this is a misunderstanding, which is why he took the wrong person. He also comments that he bought the item he is using. Irritated, Hannah threatens him, telling him not to joke with them and asks if he is responsible for all of this. Suddenly, Jack bows and apologizes. He says he only did that because he thought the servers were made for that, but he regrets it. But that is not what they want to know, and the boy mocks the situation. When called Ki, the protagonist asks how the boy knew who he was. Jack says he was following them through a GPS. He continues by saying that the best way to make money is by staying close to the protagonist. Seeing the boy's laughter, the young man asks what's so funny. Jack turns to Hana and says he is her fan. Pinching her cheeks, she hears the young man say that someone is using her name out there. For the past 3 months, he had been wandering around Seoul, and that's how the merchants approached him. He heard them talking about this so-called Jack. Then he read the contract and discovered more about that story. That's how he found out how to make money as an imposter, and that's how he learned about this so-called auction. He explains that there's a black market in Area D5, where there are various rare items, including those handcuffed people. Those merchants were players, and with that agreement, when they lost their lives, they also lost their souls. And the creator of that whole event was the Goblin Lord. There is also an explanation for that name, which relates to the position of goblins in the work chain. Thus, the second goblins follow the great third goblin, called Lycan. It is this person who is causing all of this. Now everyone knows which path to take Area E, but Ki has other plans and will explain them to the team. Then we see the team exiting from the top of train, and the simple idea leaves the group astonished. He explains that he knows where the black market cabin is, and there he intends to extract information. The young man is determined to accomplish that. Then they enter that area, and a deadly creature begins to chase them. The protagonist tries to hurry and get out of there. The boy with red hair says that physical attacks don't work on them, as they are similar to ghosts. But Ki is already well aware of that and uses his fist to attack again. The plan works, and now they must hurry to attack the remaining ones. Suddenly, Jack calls him, asking him to stop. The boy's shadow, similar to his soul, begins to give Ki instructions on where to go. Jack explains that this is part of his special invisibility item. He also says that the problem may come after that, as defeating all the specters will cause their mother to appear, and she is called the Banshee Boss. Suddenly, the warrior notices a shortcut and gets a great idea. Meanwhile, Hana continues to attack the specter, but the player passes by her, ordering her not to try to finish off the creature. Noticing the confusion on the team's faces, he explains that if they do that, the Banshee Boss will appear. They don't have time for that. Sometime later, the team continues to fight against the creature. Two of them run from the specters that are chasing them. In a memory, he asks one of his team members if he and Detective Daesu can distract the specters, and the young man confirms, even without knowing there would be so many. At another moment, a man observes a fierce fight between two players, and the winner turns out to be player B25. The creature with red hair stops in front of the boss's table, who questions what he wants. He wants confirmation from that man, who is a con artist Jack. Irritated, the creature spills his wine, but the man merely finds that tedious. Suddenly, the creature kneels before the man, calling him his king. The false Jack asks what a goblin has to report to him, and the creature says it received information that the first goblin was attacked. The king asks about the scout they sent, and his servant asks him to look at the screen. He is shocked to realize that there are players who can defeat him in Seoul. Looking at the screen, he's impressed to see Hana. He smiles and says that now things have changed a bit and orders that the intruders be captured. He only wants Hana. The others can be eliminated. Inside the train, Hana asks if Dasu and Jang Kyung will be okay, but Kei reassures her, saying that both are quite capable. Now they are at the entrance of the black market. There people wear masks to hide their identities, but Jack only has one. Hana asks how they will do it since everyone must enter together. Then he says he will lend his cloak to Suju Nim. He must use that to enter the black market and learn more about the contracts. The young man needs one more mask, but Jack has a plan. Inside Area D in the black market, we see some masked men playing casino games. The young man is using an invisibility skill to pass through that place unnoticed. Stating that it is larger than he imagined, he wonders where he should start researching. Suddenly, he notices a rather suspicious man passing by. Meanwhile, Daesu says that Jang Kyung is a good runner. The young man smiles, thinking that Ki never gives him a mission he can't accomplish, and wonders if the team is doing well. Inside, Hana and Ji Sang-soo are already masked. The girl is worried if that plan will really work, and if it doesn't, whether Plan B is a good idea. The second goblin stands before them and asks if they are merchants. He asks what they are both selling, and the two are at a loss for words. With no other option, Hana takes off her cloak. The goblin is impressed, especially because his boss, the false Jack, asked for them to be brought to him. With a smile, he calls for the two to follow him to a more private space. Ki is wandering around with his invisibility cloak, observing an orc trapped, ready to be sold. He watches other people being brought there. They seem to be victims of that contract. Suddenly, he is startled to notice that Gong Jiwon is among them as well. That's the guy who participated with him in the skeleton hunt. He seems to be conscious, but he doesn't look well. But Ki tries not to think too much about it, as he is running out of time. He hurriedly leaves as he urgently needs to find the second goblin. Suddenly, he notices a creature nearby and realizes he has found one. The young man runs towards the creature and delivers a powerful punch to its face. Elsewhere, Hana and Ji Sang-soo wonder where the goblin is taking them. The creature leads them to a large door, and from there we see the false Jack appear. Hana notices that there is also a third goblin with him, and Ji Sang-soo realizes that this guy is his imposter, and on his head is a goblin helmet. That's the reason the goblins are following his orders. Suddenly, the false Jack calls for Lycan. Realizing he might lose his life, Ji Sang-soo shouts that he has something to say. The false Jack asks if the little man knows who he is, but the young man is clever and proudly confirms his name. With an enigmatic look, the king asks if he wants to drink something, and Ji Sang-soo realizes he can't back down now. Everyone is seated at the table, and the man asks why they are there. The real Jack says that his client wishes to pass through the black market and have a direct connection to obtain large quantities of high-quality goods. They need a large amount of funds, and the false king shows an exorbitant amount as an example. Both Hana and Sang-soo are impressed by such a large sum of money. But the king says that it is not enough, as he needs to trust his client. The young man says he cannot reveal their identities, only confirming that they are quite well known in Ark. With a smile, the fraud deduces that he is talking about a specific person, which confuses Sang-soo. The man orders them to bring the paperwork. He signs the documentation, and now the deal is made. Suddenly, handcuffs appear on the real Jack's hands, which frightens him. For the fraud, that is the only way to ensure everything goes smoothly. The name of that man is Jack, and he comments that he hopes the deal will be mutually beneficial for both. But Sang-soo doesn't back down and says that the man is not the only one with a card up his sleeve. The fraud is startled to realize that the young man's trick has just arrived. Then suddenly, a specter passes through the door, and it heads towards the king, who orders Lycan to do something. And then the fraud shouts for Lycan to take care of all of them. One of the team members asks if they arrived late, and with a smile, Hana says they showed up at just the right moment. Irritated, the king shouts for Sang-soo to accept the consequences of his actions, and with that, we see the chains shining around his wrist. Worried, Hana asks if her colleague is okay, and he confirms breaking the chains that were holding him. Sang-soo doesn't know how he managed to destroy that contract. Somehow, it just happened. The king shouts that he will not accept that as an answer. But the young man doesn't care and says that he is the least of his problems now. At that moment, it seems that the goblin managed to destroy all the specters. This only means one thing: she is coming, the mother of them all. Elsewhere, Ki demands that a goblin, fallen to the ground, answer his questions. He wants to know why they treat that fraud as a king, and the creature says the reason is his goblin helmet. The protagonist wonders if he really managed to bring the final reward from the Dreamside 1 server. The creature then says that this Jack is in room D1. She says that before everything he was also human, who ended up transforming into that, but Ki is already well aware of this. Upon seeing the notification that the second goblin has been defeated, he realizes he needs to hurry. Suddenly, Banshee appears, the mother of the Reapers and the rank D boss. In shock, the characters watch her. The creature then opens her eyes and invokes a power called Ghostly Lamentation, and the two begin to hear sounds of many people crying at the same time. In addition to crying, the voices also plead to be saved. In light of this, the characters reflect that, no matter how strange it seems, she might ally with them. Lycan then faces the creature that has just appeared, and Jack reflects that it is impressive that Banshee has been summoned. However, even so, his adversaries will not be able to touch a single hair on him. And upon finishing his reflection, he asks Lycan to charge at the new enemy. The creature understands the order and charges forward with all her might. However, Banshee is faster and manages to dodge, releasing a shockwave. Observing the situation, Ji Sang-soo creates a shield for 3 seconds, causing only the monster to receive the impact of the attack. Banshee then taunts Lycan's master, saying that he is a king who could never become a king, leaving the monster confused. After that, the Mother of the Reapers releases a wave of power, emitting a very loud sound. The power hits Lycan, who needs to defend himself, and a close combat battle begins, with Banshee showcasing all her agility, and gradually gaining the upper hand during the fight. The creature then strikes Lycan with a very strong blow, breaking his chains. Seeing the scene, Jack becomes very irritated, and asks Lycan to fight the right way, doing everything to protect his king. The monster then understands the message, and with his chains charges at the enemy, delivering many blows. Initially, she manages to dodge. However, with the chains, Lycan manages to trap her by the neck, and with all his strength, pulls, causing her to be destroyed. The monster then swears loyalty to his king, and the message that the boss has been defeated appears. After that, Choi Hana praises the creature for a job well done, and with her pistol fires at him, leaving him very confused. However, she explains that she did this to see how his regeneration is functioning, and Lycan then moves to leave the area. Observing the situation, Ji Sang-soo says that there must have been a misunderstanding. After all, the real business is over there. Everyone then continues to look firmly at Lycan, who moves through the scene. Kate reflects that he thought Banshee would at least put some pressure on the goblins. And after that, he notices something near the monster that catches his attention. The item is a kind of staff with some skulls. Kate really likes what he sees, and calls Ji Sang-soo, who responds, not understanding. The protagonist then waits for him to approach, grabs his cloak, and runs toward the item. Seeing that the hero is coming in his direction, Lycan attacks him, and a close combat battle begins. Watching the fight, Choi Hana says that the monster's power is surprising even without an arm. And Ogdeso says they should leave this to Seo Jun and secure a double contract. Upon hearing the conversation, Ji Sang-soo appears and says that this is not a problem. The guy then opens his inventory, and from within it, takes out the double contract, leaving Jack incredulous at the fact that Sang-soo managed to get his item, and he asks him how this is possible. The guy then says that his transaction is clean. Because of angel earrings, all lies told must be borne by those who speak them. And now, Jack's body and inventory belong to him according to what the double contract states. He then calls Sang-soo a slave and asks how he understands what is written on the paper. In response, the guide says that before saying anything, he should look at the top of his head. Jack then is shocked to realize that the enemy has stolen his helmet, and Sang-soo says he knows that Jack uses the helmet to control the goblins. The redhead asks how he found out, and the guide says he will show him next. Furious, Jack demands that the goblins finish off his tormentor. Jeong tells Sang-soo to put on the helmet and dominate the goblins before they arrive, but the guide says that this is impossible. After all, the goblins that already exist will continue to follow their original owner because their souls are linked to him. The Golden Knight then asks what can be done. Sang-soo responds, saying that the way out is to attack the third goblin, which is Lycan in this case. Exactly the goblin that Ki is facing in a tough fight. There on the battlefield, the protagonist reflects that he is still not ready to defeat him, while Ji Sang-soo warns him that he managed to grab the helmet. The guide also explains that the third goblin was considered the king before they were all dominated. Kang then manages to grab the Banshee's scythe and various screams are released. Observing the situation, Jack tells the hero that he won't be able to win just with the scythe and tells Lycan to finish this quickly. Upon hearing this, the goblin understands the command. The two then face each other, and the battle resumes. Lycan then unleashes a very strong power, throwing Kang far away. However, he manages to recover, and activates the power, Dragon's Eye. The young man still has the spear in hand, but it might be a bit late to use it. And then the dragon's eyes are activated. It is very difficult to fight against that monster. He didn't know he needed a ticket to deal with a rank D boss. Suddenly, he shouts Hannah's name, and the girl aims her gun at the creature. But the villain laughs mockingly at them for thinking they can defeat him that way. But suddenly, he starts to float. His body is being controlled. He orders them to stop immediately, but his request goes unheard. Ki and Hana charge towards him. Jack shouts for Lycan to finish off the protagonist. Apparently, the contract they both had has been terminated, and this was the work of the young man's dragon eyes. Suddenly, the creature's hand goes towards its former master, who panics. In all this fury, the man grabs Jack and says he had promised to protect him, but now something has changed. The creature then realizes that this young man is not its king and calls for the other goblins. Just hearing the call, the goblins appeared. As he tries to say something, Lycan stops Jack, ordering him to shut up. With his chest puffed out, he says that the young man does not have the necessary qualifications to become a king. Then Lycan completely ends Jack's life, leaving him agonizing on the ground. Noticing that the creature has noticed him, Ki says that they don't need to fight, but the monster is determined to end him too. Suddenly, chains of fire pass through his body, and the young man says he can just let him go without any more problems. The monster disagrees, and while fighting the protagonist, its skin is stripped from his body. It seems that the ability being used is really working. The young man finds it incredible. He is managing to completely control the monster. The creature is furious and lets out a guttural scream towards the team. The protagonist watches as one of the goblins is pulled by the monster. Ki realizes that the creature has even managed to regenerate the arm it had lost. Seeing the giant use all its strength, Jack wonders how that is possible. It seems he has been after the imposter from the beginning. Suddenly, the monster opens its mouth and completely devours the imposter. Jack asks Ki what is happening. His team is also confused and is thrown far away. It seems a bug has occurred. Meanwhile, the giant continues to destroy everything around it. Even Ki is scared. It seems the real king of the goblins has just appeared. Two masked individuals are talking about the items they are storing in the trunk. Those are Kim Gap-soo and Yu Yan-suk. Both are fleeing. It seems Ark is in crisis, and they are going to get out of there. However, they realize that there are humans in that compartment, victims of trafficking. One of them says it's better to leave them there and return to Ark. It's impossible to take so many people with them. They start to leave, but before they can, the great leader appears. He is angry and begins to attack, focusing only on them. According to his system message, this is a C rank. One of the team members asks if that is enough to evolve a boss monster. The young man says it's possible, but it probably has never happened in Drem Side 1. However, the creature has lost its rationality and now only moves by its desires. And its desire is to become stronger and stronger. The boy explains that the virus causing the dungeon disease and triggering greed is the Poja virus. There may be a variable that was applied to it here that wasn't in the first world. However, the strange energy on its neck is suspicious, and for him, there's a way to attack something that magnitude. Suddenly, he cuts a bit of the skin on his hand, leaving his group confused about what he is doing. And so, he manages to activate the goblin's helmet equipment, that is called Chimamorio. Kei looks at the beast with determination. To control the beast, he must become one himself. Then he notices several souls around him, including those of children. Now the weapon Blade of Landel de Von Dissy has been equipped. He is impressed that he can use it, and he asks his colleague to step back as their soul might end up being absorbed too. The level of the Chimamorio changes based on how many souls are being used, and the beast has already absorbed an endless number of souls. And Key needs to find a way to end this with the little time he has. With great speed, he rushes towards the creature. Key's hand is trembling, which means he needs to find the monster's weakness quickly. Other masked figures are startled to realize that the protagonist is indeed human, but Key simply tells them to get out of there if they don't want to lose their lives. But the great beast is already behind him, ready to attack. Ironically, Kei asks if the monster wants to devour him. He says he has many souls with him, so it could be quite advantageous to take him. Then he starts running, dodging the creature's attempts to catch him. As he imagined, the monster is not very intelligent. Thus, he activates his dragon eyes and observes the creature. Then he runs towards its neck, believing that is where the cause lies. With his hand, the giant tries to grab the boy who is running at high speed. But the boy is agile and jumps with all his might onto the Goblin King. He begins to run towards its neck. With his sword, he manages to attack the monster. When its skin is cut, he notices a dungeon flower in the area. It seems someone planted that flower on the giant, but that is not an ordinary flower. It is mixed with the Poja virus, which accelerates the development of ontogeny. With his sword, he runs once more towards the monster. Up above, he carefully observes the part of its body he wishes to attack, and thus his magical concentration is activated. Suddenly, some needles appear, preventing him from completing what he had planned. But in any case, he needs to find a way to end this with a single attack. However, he feels his strength waning, and Hana shouts for him to stop moving. She uses her weapon to attack the Goblin King. This destroys it, and he is finally removed. Kat activates his danger skill detection, and suddenly, the souls begin to exit. Kang suspects this happened because they lost their central point, and he planned to attack the source so that the enemy could not use the souls to increase its strength. However, if it continues like this, a flood will occur. And considering that the dead souls attack the living instantly, the loose souls could end up causing a massacre. So he needs to control them, otherwise, the damage will be great. However, he reflects that he needs to control his energies as he has already spent too much. And he tries to think of another method. The protagonist sees Lycan sleeping and then has a great idea. He decides to use the third goblin to his advantage. After all, goblins can control souls. However, this could end up being quite risky, in case Lycan becomes a complete Chimamorio. But even with all the risk, he decides he will give the helmet to the goblin, hoping that he will just put the souls to sleep. At that moment, a loud noise is heard, and goblins begin to appear. Ki then asks Lycan to use the helmet to seal them, and it is explained that because the goblins eat themselves, the power of the helmet was sealed, and they became common monsters. The third goblin then begins to hear many voices of souls saying various things, and he pleads for them to leave him alone. Kang continues talking to him, telling him to put the souls to sleep. Lycan then realizes that Ki is offering him the helmet. He reflects that Kang became a Chimamorio to be able to stop him. Therefore, he is the true owner of the helmet. Lycan then decides that he will follow his orders and puts on the helmet, stating that the protagonist is the true king. Meanwhile, inside the passenger cabin of train, agents Kim Gap-soo and Yu Yan-sek appear. The The two reflect on what they have just seen. It was probably a monster, perhaps a rank C boss. Yansuk then asks the chief what they should do. After all, they lost contact with Siku and Gihyun. However, he is in shock and does not respond, still reflecting on the monster they saw. And then he decides that they should return to the Ark. Gapsu asks if they shouldn't at least check if the others on the team are alive, and the chief denies it. And he says that they should run because if they stay there, they will end up dying. When suddenly, something strange happens, and they decide that they will leave there as quickly as possible. However, before they can, Kai falls in front of them. Realizing that it is a person, they try to ascertain if he is one of their team's agents. However, when they approach, Lycan appears and tells them to back off. The two then get startled, and the goblin continues to order them not to come closer. Both are confused by what they see, because Lycan is in a very small form, and the third goblin keeps shouting. The story then cuts to Jack, who is reflecting on the monstrous power, and also on the fact that the third goblin has disappeared. The man says that when he finds the one responsible for the disappearance, he will deal with him with his own hands. After all, that was a very stupid decision, when suddenly, he notices something strange, and begins to lose strength in his body, falling hard to the ground. Then Ji Sang-soo approaches and calls him slave number 1. The guy tells him not to do anything foolish as he might end up dying. Jack then asks who he is. Sang-soo reflects on what he should do, and after deciding, says that he's a much more wicked merchant than Jack. Leaving there, it is shown that Kang is lost among the souls, and he reflects that he will probably be devoured. Suddenly, he wakes up in a hospital bed, and Lycan asks if he has regained consciousness. However, upon seeing him, the protagonist is completely confused, and is informed that Ki has received the title of King of the Goblins. The protagonist then asks if he slept for 2 days, and Hanan appears asking if he is really awake. Along with her, a squirrel appears, leaving Lycan confused. Kang asks if the government people are still alive and if the intelligence service really went to the Ark. The girl says that Ji Sang-soo went there to negotiate, and the situation at the Ark is not easy at all, as the lizardmen are blocking all land routes. Ki says that if they form an army, they could defeat the dungeon, but Hana says that the place is already at a much higher level, and the protagonist asks what happened to the survivors. The girl says that they found Gong Juan, but his condition was not the best, and then an Odesu accompanied him to a doctor. The rest of the survivors remain in the dungeon due to a lack of rooms. Lycan asks Kang to give him an order, and he asks if the souls of the children have been extinguished. And the goblin says that he preserved all the souls that his king requested. Kang then asks if it is possible to return the souls of the children. However, he says that it is impossible to choose specific souls with the helmet, and besides, Ki is the owner of the item, not him. The protagonist then reflects on the name of the third goblin. He also says that because Lycan spent his energy to put the souls to sleep, lending the helmet now will not help. The creature then says that the solution is for Kang to acquire the dignity of a king, and he asks what that is. Suddenly, Ji Sang-soo appears in the room, saying that he has returned from the Ark. Kang asks if the detective came too, and he says no, as Gong Juan's condition is very bad. And then Jack enters the room, leaving everyone confused. But Sang-soo says that he is there under his command, and explains about the angel earrings. However, Kang says that the guide already deceived him when he wore the earrings, and he says that at that time the penalties did not apply. The protagonist then asks what Sang-soo knows about Jack, and he says that his memories were erased, and he fights with the redhead when he sees them roll in their eyes. Kang then asks what he knows about the dignity of a king, and the guide says that he needs a goblin horn as it is what controls the souls. He continues, saying that he has one of those items in a place called Bermuda, and he knows this because an exploration team disappeared there. Leader Kim Kanriel sent a very important distress signal. The island of Bermuda is a place related to goblins, and therefore the intelligence service requested an investigation. Kang then asks if the goblin sphere is enough, and Lycan says that with the horn he will have more dignity. The protagonist says that, although he knows nothing about the dignity of a king, this could be a chance for him to become even stronger, and he reflects that he has already reached level 59. With that, even without being able to use the Chimamorio, he can use the Blade of Regret from Von Dissy. And then he asks Sang-soo if this region called Bermuda is located. He says it is in Jangsil at Lod World. The scene then shifts to the mentioned location, where the team is suffering greatly. Totally cornered by lizardmen. Trying to survive, the captain reflects on how the monsters ended up there. And besides them, there are more types of creatures in that place. Kim then collapses on the ground and asks his team members what the name of the item they need is. The boy says the name of the item is Goblin Sphere, and the captain says that the item must have some relation to what is happening. Hearing this, one of his soldiers becomes outraged, saying that the important thing now is to return safely, and he states that they will return, because the location is a trap, and they need to ensure that no one goes there. Choi Hana and Kei arrive and are greeted by Ji Sang-soo. The young man informs them that he will wait for them in the basement. Kei emphasizes that they need to take care of the children and use the space responsibly. Then Ji Sang-soo agrees enthusiastically, reinforcing that they don't need to worry, but the dude doesn't seem confident. Kei realizes that the dungeon boss is still the third goblin, so the authority of the dungeon is in his hands. This needs to be clarified soon. Arriving at the dungeon, Choi, Hana, and Ki illuminate the path with their cell phone flashlight, but there were no traces of people or monsters. And precisely because there were no traces, it became even stranger for them. Choi Hana was feeling excited to visit Lot World. The Golden Knight wants to know if Choi Hana has been to Lot World before. She deflects, saying she has never had an event there. Kai reveals that Choi Hana is like a celebrity in South Korea. The three friends finally arrive at Lot World. Excited, Choi Hana and the Golden Knight go ahead and urge Ki to hurry. He doesn't seem as excited, finding everything strangely organized. It seemed like no one had been there since the fateful day. The trio then enters Lot World. Choi Hana was radiant. She realizes how enormous that place is, and Jong suggests they take a walk, while Kai remains suspicious. Kai feels good about returning to his routine for a while, but his brief relief is interrupted by an unknown sound. Then he activates his dragon eye power. A dense wave of mysterious energy invades the area, but they come across an innocuous musical carousel. Totally confused, Jong wonders what is happening there. Ki orders everyone to prepare. The trio readies their defensive weapons. Understanding what that was, Ki realizes a large horde is approaching. To protect himself, he activates his Blade of Regret and points the direction to his partners. But he finds himself in the middle of Lot World, full of people and functioning. People are happy and are welcomed over loudspeakers. Ki is incredulous about the reality he has ended up in. Still, cheerful messages about how magical that place is sound over the loudspeakers. Finally, Choi Hana finds him and asks what all of that was, but Ki doesn't know how to respond. Two girls spot Choi Hana and are very surprised by how amazing she is. Whispers begin among the people. Some are shocked to see Choi Hana right before their eyes. Others think it might be someone in cosplay. Ki calls her over. She doesn't know what is happening, but is trying to protect them. Then he activates his smoke grenade to get them out of there. When fired, it creates a thick fog. The visitors of Lot World become disoriented by the smoke. They search for Hana throughout the park, but they realize she has simply disappeared. Some lament not having taken pictures of her presence on social media. Then Ki notices that their outfits are causing them to be recognized, and suggests looking for a place to change clothes. They find a store that serves that purpose, and after a few minutes they leave the store dressed as students. Choi Hana comments that she hasn't worn a uniform in many years, and Ki agrees. Licken also disguises himself, obeying Ki. They find the Golden Knight, who prefers to keep his armor as he likes to attract attention, which doesn't really surprise Ki. Choi Hana asks if they are ready, but the Golden Knight comments on his outfit and hat. She explains that if he wants to go unnoticed, he needs to hide his face. Now properly disguised, they could walk around Lot World without being observed. Licken wants to know what a large tower is for. Could it be that there are very large humans occupying that space? Ki, tired, sits down for a bit. He hadn't realized how big Lot World was. Choi Hana realizes that nothing has happened until then. Everything seemed normal, with people chatting and happy music playing, as if everything that had happened before was just a dream. And that would be the new reality of Lot World. A piece of paper appears in front of Choi Hana. It was the ticket she had picked up that morning, but the issue date was from last year. She asks Ki if that meant they traveled through time, but he says no, it's just to look at the phone. She looks and confirms that the date was correct and they did not travel through time. But everything seemed to be showing a specific moment, as if everything were a grand illusion. It was disappointing to think that all of this would just disappear at some point. Then Choi Hana has an idea. She calls Ki and takes a picture of them. In fact, she thinks the photo turned out amazing. Even if it's an illusion, it was beautiful. Kei wonders if just one photo would make everything okay. The murmurs around them start again. The girls who had seen Choi Hana before recognize her despite the disguise. The girls wonder who the guy next to her is. Maybe he's a secret boyfriend. Kei realizes, annoyed, that they are drawing attention again. Maybe they should run away, suggests Choi Hana. Then the Golden Knight and Licken find them, and the group decides to actually run away from there. But they needed to know what they would do after the run. Kei activates his dragon eye and realizes he needs to investigate that riddle. Lot World was as usual. The Ferris wheel was working and music played in the background. The group decided to take a ride on the Ferris wheel. Kei realizes that this was indeed not a dungeon. Choi Hana is confused by Ki's statement. She wonders where they would be if not in an unfinished dungeon. Kei came to this conclusion because he hadn't received any entrance messages to the dungeon since they arrived. The Golden Knight agrees. But then what place was that? Choi Hana questions. The murmurs of the crowd return. People comment that this is not a dungeon. Others seek explanations for all of this. Grong is enchanted by the smell emanating from that place. The mascot can't contain his excitement. Kei knows that Grong, when he gets like this, has a reason. Licken is bothered by Grong's presence. But if the mascot was acting this way, it was because they were near a dungeon. It was strange that the smell was coming from all directions, and the smell was so strong that it gave Ki a headache. The Golden Knight realizes that in the end, they would have to research again. But Choi Hana reminds him that they had already researched and didn't come to any conclusion. Ki suggests they take a new approach this time. Someone calls for Choi Hana, who responds to the call, but she doesn't see anyone nearby. They observe a large illuminated stage, and Choi Hana questions if it would be a good idea to perform there. And perhaps that was indeed the best idea at that moment. Ki recalls that in his research, there were several strange chains, But every time they got close, the chains disappeared. So he suggests they draw the chains, as in the research. But TRYHARD isn't so confident that this would work. According to Key, that was the only choice. The Golden Knight warns that the stage setup is ready. Key praises his friend's work. Insecure, TRYHARD tries to concentrate. They needed to put on at least a convincing performance. Even if it was a possible illusion, the audience might believe it. The stage lights are ready, and white smoke begins to appear. The audience starts to realize that something is about to happen on stage. They comment on TRYHARD doing a musical performance, because other park-goers had already said they had seen TRYHARD around. The stage structure was ready. TRYHARD arrives and grabs the microphone. To start, she invites everyone to dance. The audience goes wild when they realize it was real. TRYHARD was really there. Everyone allows themselves to dance and sing to the rhythm of the music. From backstage, Kay notices how good TRYHARD is at this. The Golden Knight next to Key gets excited about the performance. Kay wonders if he should be enjoying it and activates the Dragon Eye. He feels he should let her do all the work alone. Then, with the Dragon Eye activated, he took them out of there. Mascots start appearing one by one. In total, there are 3 of them showing up. They were the same mascots that appeared when they arrived. Kay realizes that the mascots were also on the carousel, and in all the places where TRYHARD gathered people around her. Kay warns the group to get ready, because the guests were going to take a ride. TRYHARD looks at him confidently. The 3 mascots have a strange expression. They say they will indeed take a ride, but they wouldn't like to be interrupted. During this sinister operation, understanding the attack, he charges forward. He tells the mascots not to bother them during the show, but the mascots would not give in so easily. Key is not affected in the battle against the pets. Then the sound message appears. Welcome to Lot World. People again seem happy and excited around the group, but everything starts to slow down and the sound gradually fails. Another sound message is triggered, warning that the night operations will begin. The group is confused but prepared. TRYHARD notices that everyone has disappeared. There is no more audience. The Golden Knight draws Key's attention to look at something. Giant monsters appear before them. He realizes that there are not 1 or 2, but several. Quickly, he activates the Blade of Regret and charges into the attack, striking a large armored monster. He calls the team and asks everyone to stay alert. A new sound warning goes off saying that the theme is now the Monster Gay Party. Another warning says we wish you all fun and a good day. The animals are all dead around Kang. He activates his Dragon Eye and, analyzing the area, thinks that if this is not a dungeon, there must be another reason for this situation. As he walks, he encounters poisonous monsters. The pink rabbit is still there holding the sphere. Kay is pleased to have found the object again. Gaining speed, he charges at the rabbit, but the animal escapes, clutching the item. Meanwhile, the Golden Knight faces those monsters, generating explosions with his powerful weapon. TRYHARD comments that there are many of them. The rabbit has disappeared, and Key looks around in search of it. Suddenly, he spots the creature running in another direction. He hurries to follow. Meanwhile, in the Ark of Zone 3, guards confront a young man who has just arrived. Surrendered, he introduces himself as player Kim Hoon, a member of Kim Kang-ryul's unit, and asks to be taken to Captain Nahanzak. In his office, the captain listens to the news, outraged that everyone survived the Bermuda region. On the other side of the radio, the young man explains that he managed to escape because he has a teleportation ability, but the others are still trapped. The Late World, also known as the Bermuda region, as expected, is a great trap, and they discovered signs of the dungeon there. But its classification is at least level D. The boy says it is possible that it is level C and emphasizes that they need support. Listening to everything in shock, the captain becomes worried when the young man says that high-level players should not enter that place. He states that he does not have all the details but reiterates that the circumstances in the area seem linked to memory. For high-level players, memories can be a curse. Sweating and worried, the captain says this is a big problem and emphasizes that he has already sent a support team. About an hour ago, outside Lot World, the affiliated team from the company realizes that the place has not been transformed into a dungeon, but although they leave marks, this is not a rule. Leader Yoon Bam-gu asks if it is confirmed that Key was seen in that direction. His colleague confirms that yes, that is where he guided the train. He explains that this location is known as the Bermuda region, and Bam-gu is outraged because there are many records of disappearances there, commenting that no investigation has been disclosed, but that no one has ever returned alive after venturing there. Byung-hoo can only conclude that for Key to have taken such a risk, he surely knows something. Perhaps that is where the source of his power lies. He then issues an order to his team determining that whatever they find, they must follow Key's tracks. Without thinking much, they cross the portal. But upon arriving on the other side, they are surprised to find life, children playing, and many people moving about. They wonder if this is real since the same location that looks like an abandoned park from the outside pulses with joy on a sunny day. Byung-gu reveals that he does not understand what he sees but observes that everything is intact around as if the dream side too is about to happen. The leader asks his team to follow him as they will try to discover what is behind this situation. As they walk, the masked figures attract everyone's attention. Further ahead, they hear a famous song by idol TRYHARD. Everyone is surprised and wonders if she is really performing. Byung-gu remembers that the young woman is part of Key's team. They decide to walk to the stage, but are surprised when suddenly the day turns to night. Without time to think, they are attacked by a huge, monstrous wolf. The beast tries to bite Byung-gu, but he dodges, draws his sword, and charges at the creature with all his might. Other monsters appear in pursuit, including humans and cyborgs. The commander orders everyone to prepare for battle and attack without mercy. But suddenly something or someone catches his attention. Indignant, Bamboo stands before a warrior. It's Ki, like an imposing hero with bright yellow eyes, clad in powerful armor. TRYHARD aims and shoots at the monsters mercilessly. Lycan says he needs to become stronger for his lord. The enormous red goblin appears. Filled with rage for having meddled with his lord, Lycan attacks him. But the goblin is stronger and knocks him away with a punch. About to take another hit and be defeated, Lycan is saved by the Golden Knight. In the Knight's arms, he protests, kicking because he can't believe he's going to lose to a level 2 goblin when he's a level 3. Trying to calm things down, Zhang simply says they need to escape. However, as soon as he turns around, he comes face to face with a gigantic Viking carrying a piece of firewood. Zhang panics, but before he can take action, a bullet pierces the old Nordic man's head. He falls to the ground with a thud. The idol warns her friends to be careful. The knight shouts that there are still many of them. Still in Zhang's arms, Lycan says it's better to flee because he has lost his power. Reflecting, the goblin thinks that perhaps he exhausted his strength while controlling the souls earlier. But he does not regret following an order from his lord. Both are still trying to find an escape route. Zhang walks ahead and encounters Kei. He observes that his companion is transformed using magical power. With this energy, he can easily destroy all the monsters. But upon hearing him, Ki doesn't hesitate and charges at his friend. Zhang is taken aback and doesn't understand why he is being attacked. Enormous before him, Ki glares at him with a sinister aura. Lycan warns that something seems off. The knight asks his friend if he did something wrong for him to act this way. But the young warrior unleashes a lightning bolt in his direction. Someone shouts for him to get away and blocks the attack. Surprisingly, it's the other version of Ki, dressed all in black, and he asks if his friends are okay. Lycan is confused to see two versions of his master. However, the real Ki tells his goblin friend to look closely, and asks who the true king is to him. Upon activating the Goblin King title, Lycan is able to identify the correct version of the player. He wants to know how there can be two versions, but Ki cannot explain. With a black crown and empty eyes, the evil Ki glares at them. Preparing to strike, the good Ki activates his freezing flash skill, running like the wind towards his twin. The sword shines, and the young man strikes his enemy. Now Zhang, Choihana, Lycan, and Ki catch their breath, leaning against a wall. Exhausted, Zhang comments on the fact that with the fall of night, the monsters simply appeared, and Choihana says that makes more sense. She questions it was really a version of him that they just saw, and he confirms. Choihana asks if this has to do with that item. The sphere carried by the rabbit pet is somehow responsible for the strange flow permeating Lot World, and that item must be the Goblin Globe. In that case, Hana suggests they should capture the pet and get rid of the sphere. He adds that just like people, the monsters must be illusions with real forms. The colleagues pay attention to the explanation. He concludes that all of this is related to memories. Zhang questions him, and he says he hasn't transformed into an evil spirit since the haunted train. Besides them, no one there should know about this transformation. But Kai remains intrigued and thinks that if they specifically brought the evil spirits from all the memories, then there must be something more. Testing a theory, he asks his friends what they felt with the transformation. Both respond that they loved it, even though it was a bit scary. So that's it. The emotion that brings everything to the surface is fear, and the various types of monsters are reflections of people's fears. And his terrifying versions appear because they are part of Lycan's fear memories. Reflecting on this, he wonders what monster he fears in reality that could simply appear. A huge dragon emerges in his mind with cruel, purplish eyes. It's the creature from the S-level dungeon. His friends question him about the fear. Ki confirms and says that Captain Kangreal must be in Lot World and that they need to find this sphere. But while they think of a plan, they're suddenly attacked. A huge insect stares at them with a terrifying gaze. Zhang lets out a scream of despair. Ki concludes that the creature he fears the most is a centipede. Hana positions herself with her weapon. Their focus of attack should be the monster's mouth. Without thinking much, Hana fires several shots. Your weapon opens various holes in the creature's mouth. The centipede staggers and writhes in pain, crashing to the ground with a thud. Kei wants to know if his friend is okay, and he recounts that when he was a child, his father would lock him in a closet full of those centipedes. As they talk, Hana warns about the other monsters approaching due to the noise. He gives the command for everyone to prepare for battle. The Golden Knight turns around and curses. When everyone realizes it, there's a monster behind them. It is a noble NPC named Norhan. Choihana admits that it is her fear, a player who used to stalk her. The young prince bows and Ki charges at him. However, his level is above 200. The fight is intense and the swords clash in the air, cutting through the wind. They move with agility and skill, but Ki is almost struck. However, he realizes that the NPC is not that strong. Still, he is analyzing the fight cautiously while dodging the attacks. The noble's sword nearly pierces him, but Ki ducks and strikes him hard, defeating him quickly. Upon finishing, he tells the group that they need to hurry. Hana points upward. They spot the rabbit pet with the orb on top of a house. Without wasting time, Ki activates his magic concentration skill. He leaps for the rabbit, but does not intend to let it escape this time. Until the last moment, the rabbit waits as it sees Ki approaching and then jumps to another rooftop. Cade runs against the wind and almost reaches the animal, but the rabbit stealthily dodges, clinging to the orb. However, Kay manages to slap his hand on the item. The goblin globe flies through the air, and with a jump, John catches the item in his hands. Unintentionally, he lets the object slip, and immediately a teddy bear captures it and runs away. The danger detection skill has been activated. Ki makes a huge leap amidst the rubble of the houses that crumble beneath his feet. The beast's eyes shine malevolently in the darkness. The enormous dragon Kamushi appears before him, and as if that weren't enough, a colossal and cruel clown also appears. Ki faces his enemy Kamushi and asks why it had to be here. He calls his companions. Jong asks what he has summoned. Without many explanations, he says he will buy time for the group to escape. TRYHARD is very worried. Ki says he won't be able to defeat the creature but can hold it off for a while. His friends warn him as the monster's jaw opens behind him with a roar. Ki leaps to the side and dodges. Hana, Jong, and Lycan are also thrown away by the impact. They try to regain their composure, and then suddenly, they see something impressive. Jong is amazed by what he sees. It is an enormous and overpowered version of Ki. Wearing his classic armor, surrounded by violet lightning, he stares down the monster. Kay watches him from a distance. He wonders how it can be himself there. And it is a new version of his character from Dream Side 1. The dragon grows upward with its gigantic serpentine body. The two stare at each other with fearsome, gleaming eyes. The dragon spits a massive burst of energy toward this mysterious Ki, spitting a blast of power at him. Ki performs an extraordinary maneuver, propelling his body upward. He falls stylishly and positions himself again against the monster. The beast glides through the air, emitting a haunting sound. Taking distance for a kick, this version of Ki activates the pressure super attack. The monster is hit in the face. Jong asks if this is the reincarnation of the king. He wants to know what this Ki 2 is doing there. He also cannot explain but believes he was summoned in the same way as before out of fear and seems not to be using all his power. The fight continues while the group of friends observes from a safe distance. The young man comments that just the look of Kamoshi is enough to take down the opponent. The creature releases an unmistakable death flame amidst the lightning. Thoughtful, the true Ki thinks that to defeat the dragon, a dragon weapon is needed or else his clone will be defeated. Even he would be defeated just as he was years ago when he lost to the creature, because he also didn't have the weapon. His clone gains speed and suddenly launches an attack, stabbing his sword deep into the beast's body. Kamushi lets out a deafening scream. Seeing this, he continues his silent reasoning. Although he cannot win, his clone can buy time. He calls on everyone to search for the goblin globe while they can avoid combat. This is their only chance. The team races against the clock, but before they can advance further, they come face to face with a gigantic green goblin. Without thinking, Ki slashes the creature's belly. While running, he alerts the rest of the team that the area is filled with monsters. TRYHARD screams his name. Suddenly, his evil clone resurfaces surrounded by an aura. His eyes shine with hatred. The partner comments that they are surrounded by versions of Kang Seojun. But the big problem is that the fight between the dragon and K2 is attracting more monsters to the area. Losing their balance, they feel a tremor shake everything around them. Finally, they realize they are surrounded by all kinds of monstrous creatures. The enemy seems to have grown larger than before due to the souls it has consumed. Hana says it's time to see how strong Seojun is, as that is Chimamoriyo. Jang and the little monster agree. Disagreeing, our boy says he is in trouble because his opponent's ability consumes souls, and that includes the souls of children. Seeing the creature approaching, Choi says the young man needs to decide quickly. While facing the enemy, the protagonist asserts that they need to find another way, then shouting that it's time to fight. Suddenly, a car appears, interrupting the battle and running over the monsters that were scattered along the way. Kang is confused by the scene as he wasn't expecting it. Real, the captain of the Ark, asks everyone to get into the vehicle before introducing himself. The protagonist thanks the man for the rescue, then asking if he scared the monsters away with the headlights. Confirming, the captain says he knew the creatures were weak to light, especially sunlight. With the speed, the players in the back seat start to feel nauseous. When Kim was talking about how he tried to find the boy, a blade pierces the car's hood. Quickly, our boy looks in the rearview mirror to see which monster isn't so sensitive to light, and discovers that is the soul consumer. The captain tries to make some maneuvers in hopes of making the enemy fall, but nothing works, and the monster resumes striking with its weapon. One of them hits Jaeyoung's armor, causing him pain in his shoulder. Taking action, Hana shoots upwards, hitting the enemy squarely. The problem is that even being a clone, he is quite resilient. Ki decides to get out of the car and confront the enemy. The consumer stares at him, then strikes with his sword. But the protagonist is faster and dodging, grabs his opponent's arm, and, after a few more moves, manages to knock him down. Sitting, the clone tries to understand how that happened, But our boy advances again and using his hand slams the clone's head against the car body, then asserting that he is tired of the enemy and that he should go away. Not getting any response, he grabs the soul consumer's neck and holds his face right in front of the car's headlights, causing the creature to simply disappear. Alone and standing, the protagonist opens the panel and collects what was left behind by his opponent. Then he asks Kim to continue the journey to the hideout. Those who were hiding hear a noise, and upon seeing that it is the captain and Hana, they are extremely happy. Steve Jun observes the moment of relaxation until the interrogation about why help didn't arrive or why they ended up there begins. The group leader shouts that there is an S-class monster in the streets and that Ki and his clone are fighting like crazy. The information leaves the young people shocked. The protagonist realizes that people are confusing his clone with his true self, and they probably don't even know who Choi really is. Furious, Ryul says they need to invade the dungeon immediately. Approaching, our boy asks if the man found the dungeon, to which he replies yes. Then the group gathers to see the images from the drone controlled by one of the guys. He tells the captain that they are on their way. Quickly, the device reaches the lot tower. Kang asks if the guy could get closer, but he says that if he does, he will lose the connection, since that is not a normal dungeon. The duo sees that there is an entrance that looks more like a black hole. However, suddenly, the drone stops responding. Boots appear in the image. Worried, the protagonist asks the blue-haired guy to try to see who they are. As he moves the camera, they discover that they are the members of the company. Thinking, our boy concludes that it was the group who summoned Ki. The leader of the organization notices the presence and, without hesitation, crushes the device with his foot, leaving the drone's owner desperate. With his arms crossed, the protagonist says that it probably wasn't the company that created that dungeon, since if that were the case, his clone wouldn't have been summoned. Then he and Choi look at the captain, who doesn't seem to be doing very well. Desperate, the man asks who the hell summoned Ki. Blandly, our boy says they need to clarify a misunderstanding first. We see the hooded figures again. Confused, the leader asks what kind of people the group is. Curiously, a subordinate questions if what's in front of them is a dungeon. The captain says he doesn't know as he has never seen anything like it in his life, but he is sure that this is where the power of the Bermuda district is hidden and that such an opportunity will never arise again, since in the right hands it could even become a weapon, to the point that it is possible to explain the existence of that place as dungeon flowers lead to dungeon breaks. It is revealed that, among other things, the company also explores special dungeons and transforms them into weapons. As is the case with the Ghost Subway dungeon, the leader says that if everything goes well, they could be promoted as the first team. Then asking if everyone there is ready for a promotion, the subordinates shout yes. But before they could enter, a bear mascot appears and walks through the portal without hesitation. Nervous, the captain tells everyone to hurry as Ki will arrive soon. Thus, everyone runs and enters the tower. We see the city completely deserted again, until out of nowhere, enormous creatures appear. After doing a countdown next to Kim, our boy charges into attack with his sword. One of the group members is left open-mouthed at such agility. The captain approaches and asks if the protagonist doesn't want to look for the goblin orb. Our boy says that probably the owner is inside the dungeon, so they need to go in there first and kill the monster. Hannah asks what happens if the orb appeared because of the dungeon break. Responding, Kang says that the item is too large for that and must be using the dungeon's power as a conduit. When asked if that is possible, he says that Seoul has become a game where nothing is impossible. Before passing through the portal, the protagonist thinks that soon he will be able to resolve the issue of the orb and the clone. Noticing afterward that no information appeared, even though he touched the dungeon, suddenly, something emerges and attacks him. Seeing the immense creature, he wonders what the hell that is. A warning appears, stating that an unknown force is stirring the world of Lot. The monster launches its tentacles again, which are destroyed by Kang. Catching everyone by surprise, a new mission arrives, which consists of eliminating the parasites that appear in the world of Lot. Thus, in the end, the Piera Puppet theme park will be created. Reading that, our boy wonders how that is a dungeon call. We see the ghost train from which a group emerges. A guy with white hair thanks for the trip. Shrugging, a young man with pink hair says he did what he was paid to do. Thinking, the captain reflects on how it is possible for the boy to have taken control of the Class D dungeon and use it as a means of transportation. A young woman in armor calls for the man and says she will show him the place. Sometime later, the leader says they are about to enter a place they shouldn't be. Without turning around, the player says she knows there aren't many senior players with experience. The man then says that's why they are needed there, as they have the memories of the first version of the game. Then the duo comments on Ki and Clark having entered that place as well. And the leader states that if the duo is out of that world, things will get ugly, so everyone must stay alert. Upon reaching their destination, the armored girl asks why the subway isn't blocked as they said, concluding next that the place was definitely collapsing before they arrived there. The group decides to go to the surface and are shocked when they come face to face with the enormous parasite. Confused, the captain asks what the hell that is, while another guy questions if it could be a dragon, which are classed as monsters. Suddenly, a slimy tentacle grabs the leg of the young redhead and lifts him into the air, until both simply disappear into a hole in the ground. All the group hears are the screams. The captain states that he heard that place is going to become a dungeon, so they should save the crime for later, as now it is necessary to find a way to stop that. In the midst of the chaos, Kang asks everyone to step back. Then he strikes with his sword, using the freezing ability. Thinking, the protagonist concludes that the Bermuda District and all the mysterious disappearances, absolutely everything was caused by that creature, which means that the players who attack the parasites are in deep trouble. As he looks at the portal, he says that up in the tower can only be the seed room. Therefore, it's better for them to find the boss before the company, since this is the only way to stop the dungeon's summoning. Disagreeing, Kim says it's impossible even for the young man to do that, and it's better to return to Ark to regroup. Knowing that the company will speed up the dungeon's breakdown process, the protagonist asserts that they need to move forward. Obeying, the whole group charges at the giant parasite. Screaming, Hana asks the young blonde to protect his head and not to fall behind under any circumstances. Seo-jun continues delivering freezing blows, and upon reaching the portal, he calls the others to enter. Jang is the first to step in, then our boy says it's Choi's turn. Right after, the captain appears running, leaving only our boy outside. The creature attacks him, eager for another meal, but he dodges and before disappearing, wishes her a good day. A message appears notifying that Pierre's secret seed room has been discovered and that the unknown flow will guide Kang. As he falls, he realizes something is wrong. We see Hana again wondering why she still seems to be in a lot world. Concluding next that the group was randomly spat out around the tower. Suddenly, Lycan appears running, searching for his owner. The player says that Seo-jun must be somewhere and that everything will be fine, they just need to find the rest of the group. Seeing the expression of the little creature, she asks if it is scared. Denying it, the little monster says is not afraid of anything, showing that it is indeed like a child. Sometime later, Choi asks about the story that the little one was not always a monster, confirming. The goblin says he is a descendant of the goblin clan. Curious, the young woman asks how he then became a monster. With arms crossed, Lycan says he doesn't remember. Thinking, the player concludes that the creature seems like a kind of guide NPC and seeking the king's dignity must be a hidden mission. Suddenly, an explosion occurs and a black dragon full of teeth appears. Confused, Hana asks what Kamushi is doing there. When the dust settles, Ki also appears, with his eyes shining in a shade of yellow. After observing the boy for a few moments, the young woman says that Seo-jun said Kamushi would win, activating then his Bun Blood ability. We see our boy again having no idea where he is, since everything around him is white as if he were inside a drawing paper. Upon noticing that his shadow is also missing, he concludes that he is in the game realm. Suddenly, a mysterious voice says that a precious guest has just arrived. Startled, the protagonist grabs his sword and asks who that person is. The boy introduces himself as young Su and says it's a pleasure to meet him. Kang is even more confused. Turning around, the young man says it's better to show the video first. The protagonist watches the screen in silence. Explaining, the boy says that on October 2, 2021, it was his first day at a company. But nothing went as he expected, and after a tough day, he went home, slept, and prepared for the next one, because he was too ambitious to give up. The boy reveals that he entered the Lot World at 6 a.m. the next day, and unintentionally came face to face with the dungeon boss, Pierrot. Terrified, he froze as death approached. Thus, instead of being late that day, the young man concluded that he would die in vain. However, the boss showed him the goblin orb and, not satisfied, used the item on him, for some reason transforming him into a puppet whose memories and emotions were lost. Pierrot handed him his treasure and claimed him, before completely disappearing and leaving him trapped in the Lot World. Young says that after that, those who entered there without knowing anything ended up having to face a monster that represented their fears and traumas, and with the deaths, new monsters appeared, which is why whenever someone arrives, their life is taken by the night. Intrigued, the protagonist asks why he is showing all of this. The young man says it might be because of his desire not to be forgotten or his wish to prove that he is not to blame, since he doesn't know many details and has few memories of his old life. Surprising our boy, the young man reveals that he is also the bear's mascot, the same one that attacked the group and ran away with the orb. Young states that, in fact, the bear mascot that the young man met was not entirely him, but rather another puppet, being the only one who possesses Su's true thoughts. What made him understand a little more about the current state of the world after wandering around. The problem is that even thoughts are connected to the orb, and he is unable to do anything. But he discovered that Pierrot likes to watch happy days, especially the moments that lead to nights full of horror and tragedy. This means that the creature feels joy in seeing people make extreme choices when they struggle with pain. Given the explanation, the young man asks if the protagonist is Ki, revealing that he also played Dream's side one, even though he did not receive any payment for subjugation. Young begins to disappear, stating that he does not have much time, so he needs to say that only Kang can do what is necessary because he has the goblin helmet. Holding a shining black sphere, our boy asks if that is the goblin's orb. The young man confirms, and the protagonist receives some rewards. Su says that he must become the owner of the orb to be able to demonstrate his true strength. If he wants to defeat Pierrot, in addition, the boy must close his eyes and hold his breath. While cursing, the puppet is censored, but before disappearing, it states that the protagonist must be careful with the regular updates, which are carried out every year since, according to the information he obtained from Pierrot, he's in great danger. We see Hana asking Lycan to stay away. While another clone of Kang advances, the girl manages to dodge another blow. Suddenly, the enemy makes daggers appear and throws them towards the young woman, who activates her Eagle Eyes ability. With her agility, she manages to dodge all the weapons. The enemy decides to try something else and makes a large sphere of yellow light appear. Frightened, Troy crouches down to try to protect herself, while thinking that this guy is indeed different from the real Key. Screaming, she asks if he is difficult to defeat, then stating, without waiting for an answer, that he is not before firing. Bullets with sharp tips head towards the target. The clone successfully dodges the projectiles, but ends up being attacked from another direction. With the enemy cornered against the wall, Hana fires a few more times. The problem is that the false Key can protect himself using his sword. The young woman wonders if he would be stronger than the real one, but says that even if the enemy has the skills and good sense of her ally, he is still a brainless monster. With a snap of her fingers, she says it is time for him to disappear. The enemy looks up, but it is too late as the bombs explode and part of the ceiling falls on his body. The last thing his eyes see is Choi. Meanwhile, in another part of the tower, the young blonde and the blue-haired boy flee from something. It is yet another clone of Key. The captain and another young woman appear and come face to face with the chaos. Crouching down, everyone escapes the blow. The young man reveals that even though he does not look like the real Key, the clone fought against Kamushi. Kim says that is exactly why the creature is starting to hunt players, as it has already defeated all its opponents. Suddenly, Hana appears further ahead and with a shot, takes out the enemy. Smiling, the young woman asks if she is very late. Meanwhile, inside the White Room, Kang wonders if he should start the process, since he is more than ready to become the owner of the orb. By pouring a little of his strawberry juice over the sphere, a strong light appears, followed by a message that says that due to the king's imprint, the orb has regained its true form. The protagonist discovers that he is now the owner of the Goblin King's ring. Thinking, he says that he now understands why Lycan said that the item increases someone's royalty. With the end of the imprint, Seojun begins to dominate the senses of the Goblin King and gains the ability called Mortuary, which allows him to distinguish between good and evil souls. Excited, our boy says that he can now also bring people back, since the cause of it all was the orb. Thinking about how, all this time, he and his group have been killing monsters that weren't even monsters. Kang reveals that what terrifies him the most is Pierrot, who used the item to materialize people's souls and create that place. Seeing that the location is collapsing, he decides to go through the portal that leads to the secret sea room. We are taken to the cinema floor, where the blonde archer tries not to be killed by the clone of Key, while knowing that there is no way to win. Suddenly, the protagonist appears and saves the day. The enemy shows that he is stronger than he seems and counterattacks, but our boy manages to dodge beautifully. Hana screams for Seojun, pulling him from his thoughts. In the air, the young woman says she will help him, but he will need to wait a bit. Thinking, Kang remembers how his mind only thought about killing during the time of Dream Side 1, exactly like the clone in front of him. Determined by knowing his own weaknesses, he decides to charge forward, aiming for the sword of the false Key, used to compensate for his lack of offensive power. The two engage in a sword clash, while the protagonist says that one of the weaknesses is the fact that his opponent's blade is too rigid. Jumping in the air, he delivers a fatal blow. However, the clone manages to escape in time. Without giving any time to rest, Kang charges again, with the goal of exploring another weak point. Taking advantage of the enemy's moment of distraction, he attacks from behind, showing that he now has more experience than before. The false Key ends up losing his head, thanks to our boy's mortuary skill. Suddenly, something catches his attention. It is Choi, fighting the remaining clone. Emerging from the rear, he dispatches yet another version of himself. The player thanks him for the rescue, while Lycan and Jang say they expected nothing less from the king. Hearing that everyone is okay, the protagonist tells his allies to prepare, as there is someone else approaching. This time, it is the dungeon boss. Pierrot appears amidst the dust caused by an explosion, with a malevolent smile on his face, while asking who Kang thinks he is to take his orb. Everyone covers their ears from the creature's screams. Our boy realizes that its ability to speak is even better than that of rank D bosses. Jang asks why the boss appear out of nowhere if the mission has not yet been completed. Key says that something unexpected happened, as the goblin orb has the ability to materialize, but does not grant absolute power, and only the king has total control. Suddenly sensing magic, he states that only creatures from the demon realm can use that type of power, which means Pierrot is a demonic monster of level 300 or higher. When asked about his species, the boss merely states that the young man is invited to die by his hands, then launching a giant playing card that traps everyone in his territory. A black mist covers K, who is suddenly attacked by something. Thinking, he concludes that the dense magic emanating from his enemy is covering the space and obstructing his vision. The protagonist tries to activate his Dragon Eye skill, but it is neutralized. Suddenly, the boy controlling the drone appears and attacks him, as he was affected by the mist. Hana asks the others to hold their breath and close their eyes, but it is too late, as others had already been infected and now demand that the young man hand over the orb. Kang tries at all costs to defend himself from the attacks without killing anyone and successfully manages to knock out the group using his dagger. then picking up his destiny sword again. The problem is that the young people start to get up relieved. Seojun says that at least Hana is not among the infected. He activates his calm skill to avoid being affected, while thinking he needs to find a way out of there. Activating the ring, the protagonist concludes that this is his only way out, as he needs to use the spiritual sense skill. His eyes begin to shine in a shade of blue while the enemies watch. Finally, Kei begins to see through the mist. A message appears warning that imagination can manipulate spirits, and that the number of spirits used determines the amount of power. With one more skill, the protagonist's sword ignites. Thus, with a single strike, he cuts through the mist, concluding that this fire is special as it burns magic. Pierrot says that even so, the young man will end up as his puppet, attacking right after using all this power. Running, our boy uses his sword to defend himself, but upon getting close enough, the puppet launches a web shield, forcing him to pull back. Worried, Seojun says that at this rate, all the players there will be eliminated. Suddenly, Lycan, completely transformed thanks to the orb, opens a path for the boy, while the enemy continues to laugh uncontrollably. Charging forward, the protagonist says that enough is enough and face-to-face with Pierrot, states that the name of what is about to happen is karma. With the boss's defeat, a hidden ending is unlocked and a message appears stating that the theme park has not been completed, followed by another that says the dungeon call has failed. Upon reading that, Kang asks what the hell happened. Those who were previously infected come back to their senses. Frightened at seeing the bodies, the archer asks if he killed anyone. Thinking, the protagonist says that they won't remember causing harm to their allies as the fog affects the brain. Shouting, Real asks the guy to pull himself together, as it's not over yet, and that the priority for the living should be to get out of there. Approaching the protagonist, he asks if the boss's death has been confirmed, to which he replies yes, because in addition to experience points, he earned a title for the kill. Suddenly, someone asks him to look out the window. With wide eyes, Seojun asks how the Hell Seal disappeared. When questioned about what is happening, he says it looks a lot like the situation in Dream Side 1, which means they are in a space in the middle of absolute nothingness. Kim becomes even more confused, unlike Hana, who, knowing what it is about, questions whether that would be possible. Responding, our boy says yes, even if it is something rare. The captain asks if the duo is talking about the first reimbursement incident. It is revealed that just before the dungeonization in the first game, a bug occurred as soon as the dungeon was completed, that threw the players into a kind of dungeon, preventing them from logging back in forever. Thus, they were trapped in a dungeon with no exit, one from which is impossible to escape. Meanwhile, in front of Lot World, we see other teams still fighting against the parasite, which is determined to send everyone back to base. Worried, the captain thinks that even though they are the support team, many there lack experience. Suddenly, the creature launches its tentacles again, and the huge dragon appears in front of the building. The captain orders everyone to prepare to enter and look for survivors, because without the other team, Ark has no hope. Catching everyone by surprise, a tremor begins to happen, forcing the players to protect themselves from what is coming. Sometime later, the leader observes the enormous crater that opened in the ground and asks what is happening. The young armored woman approaches and says she can't communicate with the others. The man picks up a stone from the ground and throws it towards the barrier that's apparently trapping her allies. A message appears warning about the bug. Confused, the captain asks the young woman to contact Ark immediately, because they need to find bug instances in the first game to find an exit. 2 days after isolation, Kang's team walked through the world of Lot, which is now divided, in hopes of finding a way to escape, but nothing was found. Kim says that all the cell phones are out of service and the entire area that is not part of the tower in the world of Lot is restricted. Upon hearing about the incident from the first game, the blue-haired guy questions whether that means they are screwed. Denying, Kei says that only their current approach is wrong, as there is a difference between that situation and the old incident. Explaining, our boy says that they can log in, they just can't log out, which means they need to try to create a dungeon break. Sometime later, they meet with the team from Nahan's Sok, who explains how they ended up there. Kang feels relieved as the supplies from the support squad would help them. The problem is that when the white-haired guy opened the inventory, all the items were thrown out, showing that this place has been completely abandoned by the system. Our boy suggests they only open the inventory when necessary, while Kim says that a dungeon invasion should also be a function of the system. Therefore, they should start considering the possibility of failure. In thought, the protagonist concludes that the man is trying to prevent panic. Entering the game, Key says that the most important thing is to find that person first, since there must be company members hiding around somewhere who will be useful to find an exit, as they will want to cooperate if they want to survive. The whole group heads in another direction, until Seojun, using his ability, notices something strange. Being the terrorist team, the captain asks the others to prepare for combat, but the protagonist tells him to wait. A hooded guy appears, taking Jang hostage, while claiming he will execute one by one from the group. When asked where he has been, the young armored man apologizes and says he was suddenly kidnapped. Taking the lead, our boy says he has a proposal to make. The leader of the organization appears and asks what his intention is, since he worked hard to end the so-called dungeon call and ended up trapped where he shouldn't be. Kang asks if the man had means to foresee such a disastrous situation, claiming next that he thought he was smarter. Irritated, the masked man shouts, but the protagonist reveals that he has a plan to get everyone out of there, and if they cooperate, it will be easier. But otherwise, things will just get a little more complicated. Crossing his arms, the hooded figure says he has no reason to listen to the young man. Showing that he knows what he's talking about, Key says that restoring the system won't fix everything. Suddenly, something catches everyone's attention. We see what appears to be a giant pair of scissors rising from the ground. Intrigued, our boy asks if that's really what he's seeing. One of the masked figures gets hit while the others scream, before also being struck and disappearing completely. The protagonist concludes that the scissors can cut through space. Out of nowhere, mouse cursors appear and fly towards the group as if they were arrows. Thinking, our boy says that the easiest method during a game restoration is to restart everything to the moment before the error occurs, which means that the scissors are functioning like a Ctrl+T, aiming to erase everything they touch. Following someone's orders, Seojun stands before a dark mass. Then, another pair of scissors appears but aims at the environment. Showing that the goal is to restart the very space, the protagonist asks if the leader of the company is still thinking. He replies that he accepts the proposal, as long as the young man agrees to make a pact with him. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.